Welcome, everyone. It's great to see a full house. We are at 6 o'clock, and I'm sure people still have dinner times and bedtimes and homework and all kinds of good things. So if you can, please take a seat. I'm just going to ask Ellie, as our Deputy City Clerk, if there's any more chairs or if anybody does need a seat, if somebody else could perhaps offer theirs, if there's anybody who feels they would want to sit.
I don't think we can add more chairs in the room, but as I've advised for the people that were here, there is the option to go into the lobby. We will have full sound. You can see through the glass windows here, and during appearances, we'll call speakers up 10 at a time, so you still will be able to participate in appearances as well.
Okay, great. Well, with that, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Excuse me, as you can tell, I'm getting over some laryngitis here. We're now going to move into a study session, having just completed our executive session, and be receiving an update regarding the Mercer Island Center for the Arts. And for that, I'd like to welcome both City Manager Julie Underwood and representatives from MICA, Paul Shoemaker and Sharon Perez. So with that, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello? Oh, yeah. Thanks, Ellie. Good evening. Again, for everyone, Julie Underwood, your city manager. I'm really pleased to present MICA update, of course, in partnership with MICA, both Sharon and Paul this evening. One of the things I wanted to kind of start out with as Mercer Island's new city manager, I've completed roughly 13 months now. One of the things that I had to really understand is kind of how did all this begin? And, my analysis and my many conversations with many residents, council members, past council members, staff, this community really does value and cherish arts and culture. And it starts with your commitment to really forming an arts council in the 80s, dedicating 1% for the arts also in the 80s, investing in art activities through your Parks and Recreation Department, so film series, music, mostly music in the park, Shakespeare in the park. You have 2 art galleries. One at our community center, which, by the way, go visit it. Greta Hackett Outdoor Sculpture Gallery. All of that investment is our community's investment of approximately $1 million. In addition, our school district, in its Vision 2020 strategic plan, identifies one of their standards of maintaining the highest standards in fine arts. That's one of their goals in their strategic plan. Likewise, the community again and again have supported school levies that have included funding for arts and music. So that tells me this community is really behind arts. So that gives me a foundation why we might have really entered into having a relationship with our arts partners in the community. And then it kind of was like, what else was happening at the time? So I learned the problem was Youth Theater Northwest. Came to the council, the community members, it needed a home. And when I learn about YTN and I think, oh my God, this is a program that is 30 plus years old, started on this island, and I've worked for many communities. I've never heard of a youth theater program like this one. It is really unique to this island and this community. So I can see why you wanted to mobilize and to really try to solve that problem. And then I learned, because I was like, well, where does MICA come into all this YTN? Learn from MICA that in their conversations with the community, they heard the community say, well, there's a need, there's a greater need than just theater space and classroom space for YTN. There were broader needs out there. And so I learned through MICA that it morphed, or it evolved really from being the Mercer Island Performing Arts Center to the Mercer Island Center for Arts, MICA. And so it morphed, I think, from really finding a home for YTN to homes for other arts organizations in our community. And then that transferred into, well, the city's support for MICA. Obviously, it started with identifying a preferred site for the Arts Center, and that was identified as the Recycling Center Bicentennial Park at Mercer Dell Park. 3 parties, that includes the city, MICA, and YTN, signed a letter outlining the steps they believed would be involved in moving that project forward. That happened in mid-2014. And then an MOU was signed by the city and MICA regarding the SEPA process. And that happened, 2 years ago, actually. 2 years ago, that MOU was signed. As you know, since then, MICA had been involved in quite a lengthy SEPA review process, and the city issued a SEPA determination of non-significance with mitigation as part of a phased SEPA review that came out in September of last year. Likewise, MICA had an application for zoning code text amendment, which would have asked the council to allow for a performing arts facility to be located at Mercer Dell Park, including making an exception for parking to be allowed off-site. That was scheduled for a public hearing at the Planning Commission, and that was in roughly about October of last year. I think at that time, it'd been very clear to me that this divisiveness in our community was actually just disheartening. I have to say, no one wants to come into a community feeling like 2 important values don't have a place here. One is parks and open space, and arts and culture. I don't believe they're mutually exclusive. But definitely, I think there were community members taking sides. I mean, I would be wherever, QFC, music in the parks. I could be anywhere in the community and run into someone who would advocate for, no, Mercer Dell needs to stay Mercer Dell, and no, no, no. Then I'd run into someone at another event and say, oh my God, wouldn't it be great? So I heard all kinds of different viewpoints from lots of community members, and clearly I think people felt they had to pick sides. At that point, I asked MICA board if they would consider a pause in that application process, because as the applicant, we are required as the regulatory agency to process that application. We can't just stop it on our own. They have to agree to that, and their board did in fact agree. And we also agreed that we were going to sit down collectively and talk about what's the plan moving forward. Because clearly there's got to be a better way. There has to be. So I'm really pleased to provide our council, our community, with what those next steps in the pause process are. And I will say roughly around that time is when I was introduced to Paul and really got to work very closely on really, I think, something we both feel would be really right for the community. So next steps, in your packet, we pretty much outlined what we believe the next steps are, outlining kind of city's role, MICA's role, and then our joint together collectively. So the city will engage in a public process, and I'm going to outline that in a minute, around our community's values around arts and culture. MICA, likewise, will do a similar process, and they'll talk to you about what that involves. I was very, very pleased to hear they're open to exploring any and all ideas for site and design of an art center. Likewise, they have put Mercer Park site on hold. And then we will work, we, the city, work with MICA to identify some alternative sites. And then, of course, really looking forward to partnering with MICA to really promote and nurture arts and culture in our community. The city's community outreach process, one of the things that any new city manager coming in is going to say, what's the vision for the community? What's your plan? Where do you want to take this community? That is typically identified in the Bible, the comp plan, or the comprehensive plan. I asked the staff to bring forward to the Planning Commission request to docket this question around arts and culture policies and goals in the comp plan. I do think there are some, there is some reference, of course, to arts and culture in our comp plan, but I feel like it is somewhat weak, lacking, given, as I mentioned in the very get-go, where I think this community really wants to take arts and culture. So, the Arts Council, and if you go back and read your Arts Council ordinance, the council many years ago, I think outlined 10 responsibilities our Arts Council is responsible for, and actually this is really in their wheelhouse. They will review those comp plan draft goals and policies. They will host community meetings seeking community input about those policies, and then finally drafting and presenting those policies to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will, of course, hold a public hearing, really finalize that recommendation. Obviously, the City Council will approve that. And so that is what really defines the city's next steps in this process. And with that, I'll turn it over to Paul and Sharon. And I think I should have said this in the beginning, just if we'll take questions at the end of our presentation. Thanks, Kirsten.
Which one's the forward button?
I think it's the top.
Top? Okay. Bingo. Okay. Thank you, Julie. Thank you to the council and to everyone in the room here tonight. It's fantastic. My name is Paul Shoemaker. I'm the Executive Director of the Mercer Island Center for the Arts. And Sharon Perez is our Director of Strategic Partnerships. I'm going to be the voice for the next 15 minutes just to keep this simple. And Sharon is going to be our lead on the questions. You all know how vital and committed Sharon has been to this work. I just got to say, we are excited to be here. We are ready to take significant, new, positive steps forward. We would like to reintroduce MICA to everyone. And we'd like to restart the conversation about the arts on Mercer Island with the council, with the city, with everyone in this room, with citizens all over Mercer Island. There we go. Let me just ground us in a few basics before I dive in. MICA is a 501c3 nonprofit community organization. We're made up of an all-volunteer board of 10 people, 11 people, and 4 staff. I'll introduce all those folks to you in just a minute. And before we talk about those new steps for MICA, let me just take a few minutes and reconnect all of us to who is involved in the arts on Mercer Island and why. So when it comes to the who, the arts has a huge footprint on Mercer Island. Musical Mind Studios works with 170 students every week. And they've done that for 30 years, over 2,000 students. Connie Weibel, their director's here somewhere tonight. Want to raise your hand, Connie? Thanks. Island Youth Ballet works with 70 families this year. And they have been doing that for 34 years. Their ED is not here tonight because she's teaching, but Naomi Glass, one of their instructors, is here tonight. Thanks, Naomi. Music Works Northwest. They work with over 800 kids every year. Over a third of those are Mercer Island kids. So if you're doing the math with me, we're already at over 500 islanders, and we're just getting started. We didn't get to my ball, we didn't get the Russian Chamber, all the professional individual artists on this island. Arts is for this entire community. There's the J, and all the islanders they reach through their film festival, theater, comedy, culinary arts, visual arts. We have an open dialogue with them, tracking each other's work. Amy Lavin, their director, she's here tonight. Thanks, Amy. And of course, arts is all over our schools, including our band, which is on the way to the Rose Bowl again this year. Woo! Number 2 of 7 fundamentals in the school district's 2020 vision is about the highest standards for the fine arts. Tracy Drinkwater is here tonight as well. And I believe you all saw a letter from the director of music at the high school, Parker Bixby, who expressed not only sort of the opportunity, but the need for a space and a place in Mercer Island. Seniors, they're the fastest growing segment on this island. They participate in and they support the arts. Again, arts is for the whole community. That sidebar also just expresses some of the ways in which Micah has connected and supported the arts community along the way. And last, but certainly not least, I want to highlight the special role that Youth Theater Northwest plays in this community. So YTN works with over 1,500 unique kids every year in its in-house outreach and school day programs. Over half of those are Mercer Islanders. They have audiences that when they have a full space of 15,000 people annually. And I was thinking, if you added up 10 high school home games or a season of 5 home football games, I don't know if you'd get to 15,000. And it's also incredibly hard to walk around here with somebody not telling you about a personal connection they have to Manny or to YTN. So many of these organizations, they are unique crown jewels. Not every community has a youth ballet. Not every community has a Russian Chamber. Not every community has a YTN. It's part of what makes Mercer Island special. And I will say, we put them at risk by not creating a new space for the arts. We need to give organizations like YTN a pathway to a long-term space for their classes, their performances, their storage. And we hope and believe that Micah is a part of that pathway. You know, we don't recognize all of the arts as visibly as we do kids walking into a school every day, as we do crowds that cheer on their team at a sporting event. But the arts are out there. They're all over Mercer Island. They're just not as connected to each other because there isn't that place, that space. We would like to make arts on Mercer Island a team sport, too. Arts is for the entire community. And just a little bit about why arts matters. So there's all the obvious reasons, but also beyond the musical, creative, the visual reasons. Last summer, just for fun, anecdotally, we did a survey at the summer festival, and we asked people, why does arts matter to you? And asked them just to sort of put a dot in a jar. Nothing scientific about this. The jar for creating an inspiring and vibrant community was overflowing. The one for positive social impact was filled to capacity. A positive, inspiring, vibrant quality of life. That sounds like a powerful why to me for the arts on Mercer Island. I would suggest it's time to make the conversation about arts and Micah positive, inspiring, and vibrant again. So yes, we believe a place, a space for the arts on Mercer Island is a great opportunity for the whole community. So there are 4 steps Micah is taking to restart that great opportunity. And it starts with leadership. And any comment about the leadership of Micah has to start with us recognizing the tireless, persistent, passionate work of that founding board of 17 Islanders. We will forever be standing on the shoulders of their work. We would not be here today without them. We are ready for the next generation board. So the co-chairs of that board are Prati Misra and Genevieve Morton, right over there. They're both longtime Mercer Islanders. Prati raised his 2 boys through the school district. His and my oldest boys were best friends and teammates. Genevieve has 2 young kids in the school. They're in piano and choir. Continuing forward from the founding board are Bruce Lorig, Verl Hill, Adam Goldblack, and John Hill, the founder. who has, by the way, expressed his full support for this reshift and start. And we're bringing on 5 new leaders, people with new energy, new ideas. These are people that represent multi-generational families on the island. They are families with long musical histories. They're civic leaders. They have their own young kids involved in arts on Mercer Island. James Rudolph, Anantha Seidel, Shishi Shakes, Michelle Peary, and Elliot Newman. So if you're on the founding of the Next Generation Board, if you just raise your hand real quick so we all know who all of you are. Great to have you all here. The staff, Sharon, of course, and Keith and Jamie are continuing their staff roles. Everyone has a reason for being a part of MICA. And the reason I'm here tonight for me is personal. I've been involved in social sector work for the last 20 years. That's my life's work now. I've never had the opportunity to do something for the place I've lived for 22 years and that I raised 3 kids. And I would say the closer for me is my own 16-year-old kid now in the band, watching him not just incessantly drum away every night upstairs, learning his paradiddles, but also learning through the band how to grow up, how to be a young adult, how to be part of a team, how to learn how to have a set of goals and work towards them. So I am really proud to be a part of the MICA team. So number 2 of our sort of restarts is a stronger relationship with the city of Mercer Island. Julie referenced this. We have to row together in the same boat. We affirmed that in the January 26th letter that she and I wrote to you guys and to our board. We cannot do this without the city. We just can't. Number 3 is community engagement. MICA will engage the community to discuss what they want for arts and the culture, including the need for a new space. We have a belief we need to go out and ask the island if they agree with that and what they want. We will listen to a whole bunch of audiences in a bunch of different settings, just like lots of arts and cultural centers do. We're going to borrow their best practices. So you will hear a lot more about that in the weeks ahead, but we are going to go listen to the community intensely, openly, transparently in the second quarter of this year. And number 4, we are open to any alternative new sites and designs. We are open to any alternative new sites and designs. Our strong preference is to work together with the city to find a viable, suitable new site that is supported by this community. That is what our energies are going to be directed towards. So if you want to sum it up, MICA in 2018 has new leadership. We are committed to a strong working relationship with the city. We will steward an open community engagement process, and we are eager to find a new alternative site. So there's a few more parts of the story that we want to make sure we share with you tonight. There's an economic impact part of the story, so let me just walk through this briefly. Americans for the Arts is a network of organizations that support and sustain arts organizations all over America. So they developed a very robust economic model based on art centers in 300 cities. And that model looks at 4 ways that art centers generate economic impact in a community. It's broken up into total expenditures, which is the money that an art center spends and patrons spend when they go to an event and go and do something afterwards. Employment income, the local business owners that receive money from the patrons and pay them to their employees. Local and state government revenue, I think we know what that is. And it also creates jobs, not just jobs at the organization, but jobs because it exists. Just like when Boeing exists and a job at Boeing throws off jobs, an art center does the same thing. So to help us understand what the impact could be on Mercer Island, we looked at 4 existing art centers in this region. So let me stress, these numbers are not meant to be exact. We tried to stay conservative. They are informed estimates. So for those four communities, that blue line, that top blue line, remember again, that's total expenditures, money spent by the Art Center and their patrons. The orange line, that's employment income. Went to local businesses, they pay out to their employees. The dark blue line is local, state government tax revenue. Sorry, those aren't a little bit longer. And at the very bottom are full-time jobs that are created because of the existence of an arts center. Here's the main point. It's not one number. An arts center brings in several $1 million to a local economy, and it creates dozens of jobs. And I want to say Mercer Island starts this from a strong place. There is built-in demand more than you will find in most situations. Those 2 pages of all those organizations that we went through, most communities don't have that set of institutions already on the ground. And the audience demand potential in our community is also high. While we're on the subject of money, on the fundraising side, we expect to raise money from the community, from philanthropy, from foundations, from other government sources. We don't expect the city to pay for capital costs. We don't expect the city to pay operating expenses. Okay? One other source of inspiration for us in this restart, and then I'm moving towards the close here, was we took the time to not only talk to people on the island, but also look at other art centers around the regions. One of the things you learn when you run around Puget Sound is almost every other community has an art center. Just like they have a school, just like they have a gymnasium, just like they have parks and a library, they have an arts center. Kirkland's Performance Center is right there next to its senior and its teen center. Vashon's Community Center for the Arts is an integral part of their community. Susan Warner, their director's here tonight in support of us. Thanks, Susan. Tadeuchi, their current campaign director, she told me the last time I talked to her that she believes that MICA will be complementary to what they're doing in Bellevue. They're already talking with Kirkland about how to work together with. We're next. And in Federal Way, they just had a new transit station, and they just opened a new performing arts and event center. They have a new town center in Federal Way. And their ED is Teresa Yvonne, and she's also here tonight to support us. Each one of these cities has a different funding model that fits their local community and needs. Every one of them shared a story about a time when they thought they were not going to make it, but they did. They also made it very clear that communities change, including things like sound transit, and we can either react to them or we can decide to create a future that we want to define for ourselves. And the last thing I'll say is when I visited each one of these, you could feel each of them. They're not just a focal point physically. They are clearly a source of civic pride. And they also represent how a whole community could come together. So to begin to close, we want to let you know we are in motion and we are accelerating. Our second board meeting is next week. I got to get ready for that. Holy moly. During the rest of February, we will continue to define that community engagement process, to go find outside expertise that knows how to do this. I want to reemphasize we will be very transparent about it. You'll hear more and more about how we're going to get input from the community in lots of different ways. Everybody will have more than one opportunity, I promise. We're doing a reception with the Chamber on the 22nd. Part of the reason to put that up there is we want to meet with more groups. That's just so if other groups want to meet with us, let us know. We want to come talk to you. We want to reach out to people all over the island to reconnect with folks that have been involved in the past or that want to be involved in the future. On March 14th, the Arts Council will do one of its community meetings, and in April, we will start a community engagement process. Mercer Island has amazing assets. The arts, town center, our citizens. So we already know what happens when you combine a passion for education and great kids and engaged parents. You get one of the best school districts in the state. We're going to send more kids than we ever have before to DECA this year. We know what happens when you combine a passion for sports with athletes for all ages with a need for a space. You get a great place like Peak. And all the champions all over this island and all the banners hanging in a high school gym. So what would be possible if Mercer Island would combine its passion for the arts with a vibrant town center and public support and resources and the human capital of our citizens? Like, what's not possible if we put all those things together? What would happen if we tried to see what we could do together on Mercer Island? What if the community coming together on this was the hero of the story? So we would ask, why not Mercer Island and why not now? Our belief is the time is now. And to close, we are committed to transparency, to listening, to working together. If you want to talk to us, we want to hear from you. Thank you for your time. We'd love to answer your questions.
Lots of energy in the room, and it would seem lots of forward and positive-looking energy, or forward-looking and positive energy. With that, I do want to open the next approximate 20 minutes to council for some questions for both Julie and our friends here from MICA. Benson, then Wendy.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. And I guess I know that both the city and also MICA alluded to their public engagement process, and it sounds like it's still sort of being shaped. I'm curious as far as if you have specific goals or aims for each of the separate public engagement process. Are they focused differently? I mean, is the outcome supposed to be different? And can you just sort of elaborate on that? I know maybe the details are still being worked out.
Thank you, Councilmember Wong, for that question. So, as I mentioned earlier, the comp plan is kind of the, vision for our community, and so we're looking at and it's the whole city. It involves many broad kind of policy goals and statements. The Arts Council and then the Planning Commission will really work on those broad policy statements and goals. The other piece of why I think it's important to make sure those statements are in your comprehensive plan is you actually have a Parks and Recreation open space plan. That plan is due for an update next year. So ideally, we have these broad-reaching goals that then become the umbrella for what goes into your Parks and Recreation plan. And that will be a huge community process as well, reviewing those goals and those policies next year.
Wendy?
Oh, Debbie.
Oh, sorry.
I would just say from Micah's perspective, we do have different but complementary goals, and we're working closely to make sure that our processes run in parallel and we communicate closely. But Micah has three general audiences that we look to serve. We serve the artists, we serve the arts organizations, and we serve the residents of Mercer Island. Our community engagement process is looking to see what unmet needs are on the island that can be met through the arts. So we will be meeting with key stakeholders. We've started that already. Small groups, large groups, private groups, public groups, to really get the full, broad perspective and really through the very specific, looking at meeting the needs through the arts. And I have to say tonight is really encouraging. I really appreciate the shared interest in our community. I think it speaks to Mercer Island to have this kind of shared values of everyone here.
I'm just going to start and say amen. Thank you very much. I'm so appreciative of the reset that we've had. I think my biggest challenge with all this dialogue in the last 2 years has been the lack of kind of community engagement and public listening tours and being able to talk about the issues without being on one side or the other. So I can't thank Micah, the city, the community for coming together and really talking about what's possible as we all have the conversations with our City Arts Commission and with the public engagement that you guys plan to do. So thank you for that. I know we have great assets in this community. I think our greatest asset is our people, and this room tonight speaks to that. So we started this endeavor years ago with finding youth theater a home, and that is still a concern for me as we reset and start fresh. And I know you guys are in close contact with Manny and Youth Theater. Youth Theater was awesome for my daughter as a middle school kid. I don't know how she would have survived without it. Band, continued it forward. The arts is a huge value for all of us, whether your kids are in the program or not. So if you could talk to me a little bit about Youth Theater and what that might look like as we do this reset and what that timing and opportunity is to keep them engaged, I would appreciate that.
Exactly. Well, I won't speak for Manny. He's here, but we do work hand in hand. The whole genesis for Micah started with Youth Theater, and it is top of mind. And I think to Julie's point, we are a unique community. We are not build it with the hopes that they will come. Our arts groups and artists are here, and they need a space to be the best they can be and to help the community really appreciate that through the enjoyment of the arts. So we see a real risk in losing these groups. The need in our community is twofold. We can expand our quality of life and the benefits that an art center will bring to the community, but we also have the risk of what we can lose. And we have multiple organizations. Youth Theater is 35 years, Island Youth Ballet is 34 years, My Vols beats both of them. Probably combined, our Arts Council has a long history of arts on this island. And I certainly want to do everything in my power and not be part of the group that let it go and not continue on.
I did have the chance to speak with Manny recently, and he shed some light on some of the concerns he has. Obviously, his current space was only supposed to be an interim period, and so that's proving to be a challenge for him operationally. Funding that interim space operationally is a challenge, and I think at some point they need a home. They need a permanent home, and continuing in a church space is just, I think, originally just meant to be an interim period. So I think he, in talking with him, has been speaking very closely with his board about next steps. But I will tell you this, he loves it here. He wants to be here. He doesn't want to go anywhere else. So I think we do owe it to him, the children the program serves, the families that the program serves, to try to help. I don't know what that help looks like right now. I think at this point, because of the close tie with Micah, YTM being the primary tenant, supposedly, should there be a future center, they're interdependent, I believe. And I think what Paul tried to express is maybe we should all kind of recognize we should all be in this partnership together. Micah, YTN, all our arts groups, Arts Council, and I think there's a lot of value in that. So unless council directs me, at this point I'm not sure what the city can do on the YTN side of things, except just continue to work closely with Micah on an alternative site.
I'd say one of the things we're building right now in our 2018 plan within Micah and with Julie is to have an organized and accountable plan. And I think having a timeline with outcomes attached to it may be the lifeline that we offer our arts groups and youth theater, that they can count on, go to their board, go to their supporters and say, here's real accountable steps of where we're going.
Bruce?
Thank you. Let's see. First of all, I've been on the council now 10 years. This is the biggest crowd I have seen at a council meeting, and that includes the height of the whole tolling challenge. So kudos to those of you who have come out tonight. I know we also received a lot of letters from or emails from folks who said, sorry they couldn't be here tonight, but they wanted to express their support as well. So the room would be even fuller were it not for other conflicting activities. I'd also point out that you've brought a different flavor to this message for us tonight, but many of us, I think, will remember we were previously encouraged to be supportive of the arts by a whole raft of YTN kids coming out and performing a bit for us, singing for us, and it was hard to say no to that evening as well and to be supportive of them. I think it's helpful to point out to those of you in the audience who might not know, of course those of us here do, we've just gone through our planning session for the year, and Julie, as our city manager, has brought a new emphasis on setting a limited number of goals and pursuing only those goals over the course of the year and not trying to get too diluted into other things. And we as a council, together with staff, agreed that working on the arts and this question of how to advance with respect to MICA and the arts in this community was one of the things that we put on that priority list for our staff to be working on this year. So to the extent that we're not asking too many questions, it's because we've already had some preliminary conversation and agreed amongst ourselves that, yes, this is important, and in fact, agreed that having this evening's conversation was then a subsequent step to that initial agreement that this was going to be a priority for us. The one other thing, though, so I've sort of blathered on, the one thing I would raise a little bit more specifically to the issue is, so Manny, thank you for your letter. It certainly lays out a history of both importance to the community but the difficulties that YTN has gone through. And perhaps, if I quote just a bit from it, it says, at the city's request, the project has been put on pause. YTN, however, cannot go on pause. And they've, of course, struggled through a variety of difficult situations trying to keep their operation going. And we should all applaud them for their perseverance in that, despite having less than ideal circumstances. The thing I would suggest is that we as a council do direct our city manager to be collaborative, and I don't know what this ends up looking like, but you've asked the question, what is there council support for the city trying to figure out if there are things that can be done to be supportive of YTN and keep them going as we are working through this process over this coming year. I, for one, would certainly be supportive of that, and I see Wendy. There are a couple of thumbs up here for that, and I think perhaps we're there, but I'll leave it to the mayor to sort out exactly how that gets decided.
And just to be clear, we're willing to throw in on that too. So matters to MICA too.
Julie?
So, Mayor, is council directing me to try to work in the short term with YTN to come up with some short-term solution?
Yeah, I would just remind the public, while we don't take formal votes within these study sessions, we can provide direction to staff, continue the work. So in that context, I think I would look to fellow council members for a thumbs up if you'd like our city manager to continue or start working intensely with YTN to support them in this interim.
And of course, I promise to come back and update you and obviously seek your counsel and direction on next steps.
That's good. Salim and then Benson.
So I read the YTN letter this morning, and it reminded me of a lot of things that I saw growing up. I grew up on Mercer, and I've seen YTN move around from temporary home to temporary home and struggle through it, persevere through it. I look at what we've done with other facilities, what we've done with ball fields, what we've done with schools, what we've done with roads and parks, and it reminds me that this is a community that invests in the things it cares about. And when we think about the comprehensive plan and an initiative this year from the city perspective to work with the Arts Council, work with the community, have engagement around crafting that statement, we just didn't have it, but it was always there. And the more you articulate it, the more you come together around it, the more that you drive consistent values with the rest of the comprehensive plan, the more it will materialize. And so I hope that Manny and everyone at YTN will look at this and look at the opportunity that's in front of us and say, this is going to be your moment. We're going to find a way as a community to come together around arts as we have around everything else. Every other special interest on the island that is important to us and that we've collaborated and contributed to, except this is one that I think we just need to make that extra push on. I was really delighted to see the economic slide. That was something that I thought had a lot of value. And I think as that conversation continues and as you kind of run through the finances, you'll see and evaluate how different pieces will tie in. And I think an important part of your statement was, to look at the not only the capacity on Mercer to absorb the arts and to fund the arts and to appreciate the arts, but what is already here and how can it grow? It's very easy to look at something and say, okay, well, we have YTN in a church location and their revenues are X. But when you put them in a 200-seat theater and then you couple it with some classrooms and you couple it with a chamber and other arts organization, it has a multiplier effect. And if you can do that proximate to town center instead of Mid-Island or the South End or an old gymnasium, those things really kick into high gear. So I think as that conversation continues, we're going to see those things evolve. I think I'm hyper-focused on opportunities for this that would allow you to go out and fundraise. This has been, I think, there's pent-up demand to open the checkbook and write a check. But people need some certainty of where it's going to go and what it's going to be used for and what the timeline is. And so I hope this is the year that we can find that and make that happen. But I really appreciate the courage of what you've done. You've taken a situation that I'm not sure was recoverable, and you've done it, right? This is, I think, the recovery path. And I'm excited to support the direction that you're heading in.
Thank you. The only comment I'll note is I told you earlier, once again, we can't have a conversation about Manny and YTN coming into the room and just like taking over the conversation again. It's all good.
He's got a pretty bright star.
He's everywhere.
He is everywhere. Benson?
Yeah, speaking of Manny, but I think for a lot of us, I mean, when this process started a couple of years ago, I mean, the focus really was trying to save YTN, keep it on the island, and during the past few years, they certainly have had their challenges, and I implore and beg Manny and the YTN board to do what they can to stay on the island. I know it's very difficult, but I really want them to try to stay on the island. I'm encouraged that the council here has given direction to our city manager to engage in that discussion. I'm going to sort of now ask the question that, because I think for me underscores the importance of this relationship that YTN has with Micah. And so the question, I guess, for Sharon and Paul is that if for some reason, heaven forbid, that YTN cannot keep going on the island and needs to go a different way, excuse me, I assume that's going to be somewhat fatal to Micah. I mean, I don't know. I suspect you guys are looking at different scenarios as far as you obviously have a number of other potential tenants. But I'm just going to just throw that out there and just, ask the question. I mean, so I do see the two as very linked together, but they don't necessarily have to be. And I guess you sort of have to plan for the possibility that YTN might not be on the island.
Thank you. Well, I agree. We don't even want to think about that scenario, right, of YTN. We're not going to go there. But the macro need for an arts center on the island is one that serves many needs for many segments of our community, our artists, our arts organizations, and the residents of the island. And so different groups will be involved in an arts center. It's not just built and created for one group. But YTN is a very special group for those who've been involved in it and those who are just proud to have it here in the community. It's like all the people who love the Seahawks even though they've never been to a game. People all over the island have a great love for YTN and are very proud to be an islander because we support organizations like that and for what they bring to the community. So I guess it's a yes and yes. Yes, we really count on YTN being a key part of Micah. And yes, our community needs an arts center, somewhat separate from which groups are using it at a particular time.
Okay, I think I'm actually going to go ahead and take a turn at this point. As I said, I'm getting over some laryngitis, so I'll probably keep it fairly brief. But when Bruce referenced, the many times that we've seen this room full, quite often it has been about a subject that's painful to a number of people in the room. I would argue that for some people that is why they're here tonight. And I am hoping and I'm optimistic that there's a new positive energy with pretty much everybody, and hopefully extending well into the community as they leave this evening. I would also remind, just from the annals of history, other times when the community has come together, and when the school district made it clear that they could no longer support a number of community organizations at North Mercer. It impacted preschools. It impacted YTN clearly, and any number of other educational and community-based services that were provided. We had people show up to save those preschools, and this community rallied to save those preschools. We have Little Acorn, we have Country Village, and now even new members. We had community members show up and rally to save the hardware store. And we all know that that took some monumental effort and even a little bit of persuasion, but thanks particularly to a former council member, we still have a hardware store on this island. So I'm very much looking forward to that positive energy that comes from the community, that comes from the council, from a very talented and committed staff to support the goals of this community as we go forward with Micah, with YTN, and hopefully bridging some of the interim, so to speak. So with that, I would just, again, congratulate the people in this room for showing your commitment, continuing to be positive members in this dialogue as we go forward, and for being out on a Tuesday dark evening. So unless council members have any other questions or comments, I think Wendy?
I hate to follow that great speech with questions. This is more of a vision question. So, Paul, tell me about Micah and all the other arts organizations we have in the region. So you listed a bunch, and they're great resources. Do you see Micah being that for us, a regional draw as well? And tell me what that vision looks like.
Absolutely, yes. Let me answer part of this, and then Sharon can speak to this as well. So I'd say number one, we've had, and the reason Susan and Teresa are here tonight is because the opportunity to work with other ones is really, there's programming opportunities, there's artist exchange opportunities, there's a lot of ways in which we can make 1 + 1 + 1 = 10 with these different facilities. When you think about a relationship with somewhere like Bellevue, I mean, we're not going to be Tadeucci, but there's also things that we have that we can do that they can't do. And that two set of slides that we went through that sort of started with the Musical Mind Studios and went all the way through the school district and Parker Bixby's letter, and all the way through that expresses all these other needs that are on the island as well. So I think there's a need for arts on Mercer Island for Mercer Islanders, right? Because they don't want to be running all over the county. And there's also awesome opportunities all over this region for art centers to be able to do one thing well and another thing well. And we can bring certain things to this region because 3 of us work together or 5 of us work together. So it's clearly a whole can be greater than the sum of its parts situation. I don't know if you want to add to that or...
The only thing I would add to that is we've had the question to us sometimes, well, if we have all these great art centers in our neighboring communities, do we really need one on Mercer Island? And the answer is yes, because it's a community arts center. And so it's not serving the Mercer Island community if it's in Kirkland or Edmonds, other than in these partnership opportunities, which is great. But really who we aim to serve is Mercer Island. Mercer Island artists, Mercer Island Arts Organization, and Mercer Island residents.
Bruce?
It's a bit of just a wrap-up, but I really applaud the spirit with which the Micah folks are bringing a let's pause, let's go open-minded to the question of location, and let's be clear about the fact that we're not expecting the city to be paying for the construction or paying for the operating costs, because these are key questions that have, of course, been raised by folks who are opponents to the plan as it has existed. This is a great moment for everyone to sort of take that deep breath and look broadly at our values, our interests as a community, and to begin that question, to face that question of where are the best places to do this. How does this look? What sort of form does it take? But the one point I'd make is, just as Manny has been perseverant, and you, the board members, have been incredibly perseverant, those community supporters are here tonight, those who are watching us on TV. Bring your perseverance too, because this will grind on. This will get harder than the moment where it is now, when we're all just saying great to have the beginnings of a vision. It will be a hard slog, and stay engaged, because your help will be needed to keep it moving forward.
So with those words of great energy and wisdom, any final comments then from Julie, our city manager, or the MICA team? I personally would like to take a moment and just, Manny, could you please stand up? We talk about you, and you're here, but I think everybody should have the chance just to personally thank you. So with that, we're going to take a short break before we continue with the rest of City Council meeting. I'm not sure it'll be quite as packed or quite as energetic as this, but please, you are welcome to stay. So why don't we go ahead and reconvene then at 7:05.
And you're not all obliged to speak during public comments, please.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen. I think we're going to go ahead and try to get started again. Everybody is definitely welcome to stay. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to go ahead and continue with our meeting. We have a full house tonight, so I want to make sure that we give everybody plenty of time. Okay.
Are you going to make it through the proclamation with your...
Okay, if people could please take a seat, or if you'd like to continue chatting, you can go out into the foyer, and council will be able to go ahead and resume its meeting. There's plenty of chairs if folks want to go ahead and take a seat. Okay. So, I just want to, again, for those of you who have just entered the room, just a hello and welcome to the February 6, 2018 City Council regular meeting. We have completed both an executive session and a study session, and we'll now move on to special business. Now, before we go on to special business, which is special business, we have a guest here this evening. It's not very often that the city and hopefully members of the community have the chance to thank and show their appreciation for some of the hard work that goes on by staff behind the scenes. Tonight is the last night for our assistant or deputy city clerk. Ellie, would you like to raise your hand? And I think if we could just thank her for all the work that she does. She more or less keeps me and several of us on script for the most part, so that's important. Okay, so tonight we're actually going to open with our first item of special business being Agenda Bill 5388, and it's a recognition of African American History Month. And so I'm going to hand it over to Chief Holmes at this point.
Okay, I think we're on. So, good evening. For the record, I'm Ed Holmes, your police chief, and it is my very distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Reverend Wayne Perryman to receive this proclamation, this Black History Month proclamation. I can't think of a better recipient for this. Wayne and I, our relationship started as pretty much a one-on-one meeting in my office a number of years ago, and from there it grew into an understanding of each other. We started sharing different ideas and thoughts around race relations, particularly when it comes to policing, and the net result of that is Wayne has done pretty extensive training for us and for other police departments, 10 other police departments in the area on race relations, and he has shared his DVD that he created on black history in the United States. It's called Because of the Color of Their Skin, and I'm not here to promote it. I'm just here to tell you, if you want some very compelling, powerful viewing of the history in this country, that is something you need to watch. Again, I won't go on and on about Wayne. I could. He is a friend of mine. I'm honored to call him that, and I'll call him to the podium here to receive this proclamation. Reverend Wayne Perryman.
So I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation, and then we're going to have Reverend Perryman say a few words. So whereas during African American History Month, we celebrate the many achievements and contributions made by African Americans to our economic, cultural, spiritual, and political development, and whereas in 1915, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, a noted black scholar and son of former slaves, founded the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, ASLA, make sure I'm pronouncing this correctly, okay, and initiated Negro History Week in 1926. And whereas for many years, the second week of February, chosen to coincide with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, was celebrated by African Americans in the United States, and in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and became established as Black History Month, and is now celebrated all over North America. And whereas, after the Civil War, many black Americans sought a better life, free from oppression and in search of new economic opportunities, and the liberty to create their own lives, and whereas ASLA's 2018 theme, African Americans in Time of War, commemorates the centennial of the end of the First World War in 1918, and explores the complex meanings and implications of this international struggle and its aftermath. Whereas the observance of African American History Month calls our nation's attention to the continued need to battle racism and to build a society that lives up to its democratic ideals, and whereas this month serves as a reminder of the need for meaningful dialogue and shared commitment to the collective action that uplifts and empowers, as well as of the strength, ingenuity, and perseverance required in the years to come. Now, therefore, I, Debbie Bertlin, Mayor of the City of Mercer Island, do hereby proclaim February 2018 as African American History Month in the City of Mercer Island, and encourage all citizens to celebrate our diverse heritage and culture and continue our efforts to create a world that is more just, peaceful, and prosperous for all. Reverend Harriman.
I accept this proclamation on behalf of all of the history makers in this room tonight. Every day, each one of us becomes a part of history based upon what we do or do not do. 100 years from now, the people will look upon this day as a time of black history when NFL players kneeled during the Star Spangled Banner, a time when the President of the United States referred to these ball players as sons, not of their mothers, but of something else, a time when the Vice President of the United States walked out on an NFL game when the players knelt, a time when NBA stars like LeBron James, Chris Paul, Dwayne Wade, and Carmelo Anthony stood up at the ESPY Awards and spoke out against injustice. It is in these times that I sat down and talked with Michael Bennett and some of the Seattle Seahawks about what is happening in our world. And in response to that, I just finished a new book to give the NFL and these players some direction to see if we can bring a sense of peace to all of the chaos. Now I'm trying to raise $9,000 to put this book in the hands of NFL players, into the hands of Congress, into the hands of our leaders, into the hands of the education system, so we will have a better understanding of each other. Because black history is not about black people. In America, it's more about the relationships between blacks and whites. And I think we forget that our history was shaped by the abolitionists, white people who were dedicated and committed against slavery and injustice, that they actually gave their lives to see to it that these injustices were wiped out. That's why in this book I devote 11 full pages of the names of abolitionists who gave their lives to fight in the Underground Railroad for the freedom of African Americans. What's happening in America today will not come about by black people like me. It will come through a partnership between blacks and whites. I've lived in this community for 40 years, doing everything from coaching sports to watching Ed Pepples teams win championships, and I'm proud to be a part of this community. I hope that in honor of Black History Month, that Mercer Island will partner with me to get this project out throughout America to honor Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Perryman. Chief Holmes and Reverend Perryman, could we perhaps get a picture of you two together?
Oh, sure. Get up here, Wayne. You want a picture? Oh. Good camera.
Keep the hat on. Keep the hat on. Thank you for that. For better or for worse, the rest of our meeting is perhaps a little more procedural, but hopefully inspiring in its own way. So next up on the agenda, we actually have the City Manager's report, and for that, I welcome City Manager Julie Underwood.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last evening, staff and actually, I think, all of the council members present today also attended the CAG meeting that the city hosted, our community advisory group. It was our third meeting. They reviewed the staffing levels. A subgroup of the CAG made a presentation, and we also discussed what 10% cuts across the entire city organization would look like. The next CAG meeting is on Saturday, March 3rd, 9 a.m. at the Community Center. We will review capital needs, revenue options, and discuss preliminary recommendations. Of course, we welcome the entire community. Saturday, February 10th, all are invited to learn more about the city's financial challenges. This is a community meeting open to all. It's at 10 a.m. at the Community Center. And of course, we hope you'll join us to learn about our 6-year financial deficit and how we might be able to address that. Shop and Dine Local starts on the 7th and the 8th, and 10% of those proceeds will be donated to the Mercer Island Youth and Family Services. We really are excited to see so many businesses participating, so please, please go out and visit and patronize these businesses on the 7th and 8th. Your patronage will actually serve our community in more ways than one. Also, we're looking for volunteers. We have our next restoration event also on Saturday, February 10th at 10 a.m. Please meet at Pioneer Park. Earth Corps will be organizing this event, and please come prepared for whatever weather, and make a donation by volunteering your time to our parks. And also, registration opened for our spring and summer camps programs on February 3rd. Islanders receive early registration through February 11th, so don't delay. Camps and classes fill up fast. I know I just registered Lincoln, and he's all good to go. So be sure and register your kids. Also, 20 students and 4 chaperones from the France, right? Tenon. Pardon me. Oh, my goodness. My French is not so good. Tenon, France, will be visiting Mercer Island February 12th through the 20th. This is the second half of the exchange that began last April when Mercer Island high school students visited. And the students will attend classes at the high school for 2 days and will explore the Seattle area. The community is invited to a potluck with the French students and their host families on Valentine's Day, February 14th at VFW Hall. Please contact Linda Todd for more information, and her information is posted there. Also, you should have received your ballots, so please be sure to vote. February 13th is when those ballots are due. We do have a local ballot measure, our school district's 4-year replacement levy on the ballot, so make sure you exercise your democratic duty. A community dance is happening on February 16th, so take your Valentine out. This is hosted by our Mercer Island Arts Council. It's at the VFW Hall. Featured there will be Little Bill and the Blue News Rhythm and Blues Swing Band. That'll be from 7 to 11 p.m. There's even a dance lesson at 7. And tickets are $15 in advance and $20 at the door. And just a reminder, we will observe President's Day on Monday, February 19th. Many of our facilities will be closed. If you want more information, please visit our website. Those of you who are really interested in trash and recycling can dive into the King County 20-year waste and recycling plan. This really talks about what we're going to do to really increase our recycling rate. And I think what's really neat is that Mercer Island actually already has a 65% recycling rate. So King County is looking to move that goal to 70%. So we're almost there. If you're interested, visit their website. They're in their environmental draft environmental impact statement process. That'll happen through May. So please review their plan and comment. Also want to make you aware there are some free services for households making less than $64,000 at HopeLink's free tax help. So the service runs through April 19th. Appointments are not necessary. However, you do want to check out the HopeLink website to learn what paperwork is required, and their help hours are listed usually on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I think this is pretty exciting news. Mercer Island was selected as the best place to live in Washington State by Money Magazine. So, the best city. Are we not? We're not surprised. Not surprised. So, if you can imagine the tens of thousands of cities in our country, to be picked in the entire state of Washington as one of the best places to live, I think it's quite a remarkable statement about our community. So congratulations, Mercer Island.
Okay, so we have a large crowd here tonight, and we are moving into the next item on our agenda, which is appearances. We do have approximately 50 people signed up to speak tonight. At 3 minutes each, that has us finishing public comment close to 10 o'clock this evening, if I'm doing my math correctly. So with that, 2 requests. The first is we do have some guests here who would like to comment on one of the items that is on our agenda. So we are going to go ahead and move them to the front of the line in terms of appearances. The second thing is I would encourage all of you, if you do want to speak or you're debating whether or not to speak, to consider whether or not you would want to come up and just confirm your support, perhaps for somebody who had gone before you. But nevertheless, we will go ahead and maintain that list. Ellie will be calling numbers. And with that said, just as we are the best place to live in Washington State, I would like this council chamber to be the best place possible to provide public comment and input. And basically what that means is asking the audience to refrain from comment when somebody is giving an opinion or sharing thoughts that you do or even do not agree with. Please do show that respect for your fellow speakers. If you need more detailed rules, they are posted on the back door, and we would ask that you respect, again, the collective, hopeful positivity of people getting up and sharing their thoughts. So with that, we're going to move into public appearances. Ellie, would you like to call, I believe, numbers 1 through 5-ish?
I will have 1 through 10 line up, but as you were mentioning, we were going to go ahead and invite the speakers that came here from Arch to come up first, just so we can quickly get them out of the way before we start the number system.
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be really quick because there's a lot of people here waiting to speak. So, my name is Bill Hallerman. I'm the Director of Catholic Community Services of King County. We're one of the partners for the Kirkland Shelter that Arch is seeking funding for. Just here to thank you for considering it and for hopefully supporting it, which you'll do, I hope, later tonight. I don't have to, I used to have to talk a lot about the need and what's going on. I think folks understand what's happening in housing in our community and with homelessness, and how we need a deeper response and a more committed response. And Catholic Community Services and the Sophia Way have been partnering the last 4 or 5 years on the east side to provide a family shelter and single women shelter that rotates in churches, which is a great contribution by the faith community. We've been doing that as we've been expanding into some day services, and then trying to expand the number of months that we do that. The final piece of that is what you have in front of you tonight, a facility that's 365 days, 24/7, that has a floor for single women up to 50 single women and a floor of up to 50 family members. That would be a 24/7 shelter where we could bring employment services and more housing case management and help folks move into permanent housing. It's been an incredible journey with our community, as folks on the east side have already donated over $800,000 to get a day center started and moving over the last 2 years. And the commitment that we have in addition to Arch's funding is $2 million from the private sector, from the Sophia Way and CCS, that we're going to be raised. So we're not worried about that, because there's been such incredible support between government and private on this whole project. So just thank you for your consideration. Hope for your support.
Thank you.
Mayor, just one procedural question. Was it the will of the council to change appearances to 2 minutes, or are we going to leave it at 3?
We're going to leave it at 3.
Okay.
And hope
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Speakers can be brief.
Hi, my name is Josh Terlaw. I'm with Congregations for the Homeless in Bellevue. I work at a men's shelter, working with people from shelter all the way into housing, and I will definitely keep it under 2 minutes. I just want to encourage
you're fine.
Support to. I want to encourage you guys to support the Arch's recommendations for the Housing Trust Fund allocation of funds, as we're looking to use those funds to. We already have 10 shared housing concepts where we have men that were formerly experiencing homelessness in a house with other people and getting back on their feet. We have about 90% rate of people getting from that environment into permanent, stable housing. So it's a really great program, and we're looking to expand it, and I'd encourage you to support the Arch recommendations. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Dan Johnson, and I'm a board member with Imagine Housing. And I, too, am here to thank you. Your support of both Arch and the Eastside Housing Trust Fund will enable Imagine Housing to develop 130 new affordable housing units within the master plan at Estera Park in Redmond, creating a welcoming, affordable space for low-income to moderate-income families and individuals. I'll skip the paragraph that kind of talks about how we hit all the buttons of the master plan and create diversity and, close access to transit and walkability and all of the things that are a part of that design. But we'll tell you that Imagine Housing is committed to being a good steward of the public funds, as we have been for over 30 years, developing 576 permanently affordable homes on the east side. And as a former longtime Mercer Island resident, I'm proud to also include Ellsworth House for seniors here on Mercer Island, 59 units, as part of our property mix. We're determined to address the housing crisis by creating more affordable homes close to good jobs, schools, transit, and resources, and providing on-site individualized supportive services for residents in order to help them thrive. Our 576 units house between 1,400 and 1,500 people today. We have an aggressive growth goal to double our impact in the next 5 years, and we have to do more. Our waiting list is close to 3,000 people. So, again, thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Mayor and council members, my name's Denise Ashbaugh. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I'm a longtime supporter and a board member of the Sophia Way. The Sophia Way provides services for women who experience homelessness on the east side, including from cities like Mercer Island. And like the rest of the people who have already spoken, we'd like to thank you for allowing us to speak on behalf of our organization and also for your past support of the ARCH program. Second, we're grateful for your consideration of the current ARCH recommendations for city funding of the Housing Trust Fund. One of the projects that's being recommended for this round is the CCS Family and Women's Shelter. As many of you know, this project is a partnership of many entities, including the Catholic Community Services and the Sophia Way, and will ensure that every woman and every family with a child anywhere on the east side will have one place where they can access all of the services that will help them exit homelessness. That means a day center, a night shelter, case management, connection, community, safety, home, all in one place and all under one roof. On cold and rainy nights like we've been experiencing lately, but also on those nights where it's a little bit warmer but one's still exposed to the elements, this is when we have this wonderful vision that the most vulnerable in our community will not be standing outside alone or transferring from bus to bus, waiting to get foundational services that they need and that they deserve to be well and safe and move forward. We as an organization and as individuals are excited to partner with you and many others to provide the opportunity to our community and change the lives of both women and families who are experiencing homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you to our guests here tonight. We appreciate your words. So, Ellie, are we then ready to move into the...
So let's go ahead and welcome up speakers 1 through 10. If you can queue up in the order of your number, it will help us keep track of who's speaking when. Thank you.
Great. Okay, welcome.
Are you ready?
We're ready.
Okay. Ira Appleman, 9039 East Shorewood Drive. It's a shame that after a year-long review of its activities in 2017, MICA in 2018 has decided to continue to attack Mercerdale Park. This isn't a reset, it's a retry. That means that the thousands of islanders who love Mercerdale Park must organize to oppose MICA. Unfortunately, even if in the future MICA comes to its senses, it may be too late to reverse the opposition to MICA. We've seen this retry before. In 2013, the City Council announced it would look at multiple sites, but it was obvious that they wanted Mercerdale Park, which was on the list of 6 possible sites. They produced a phony study that, of course, selected Mercerdale Park. In the over 4 years of its existence, MICA hasn't exactly established a reputation for truth-telling, which makes me very suspicious. I have with me MICA's June 2014 application for Washington Department of Commerce Building for the Arts funds. The directions emphasized applicants must already have 501c3 status and that having applied isn't enough. Quote, is the applicant a nonprofit organization with current 501c3 status? MICA checked yes, even though they didn't obtain current status until around September. The directions emphasize that applicants must either own the land or have a lease. Quote, does the applicant have control over the proposed facility through either, you must say yes, I'm reading the same thing, you must say yes to one of the options below as of the date of application. Micah responded yes to a, quote, long-term lease, 15 years minimum. Of course, Micah had no lease and nearly 4 years later has no lease. For at least a year and a half and after, Micah falsely claimed its building wouldn't be in Mercerdale Park. In its application, Micah wrote, quote, the proposed project will be sited on city-owned land that fronts onto Mercerdale Park. Micah has continually said it fronts onto Mercerdale Park or is next to Mercerdale Park, but the truth is it was always in Mercerdale Park. Finally, there's the matter of finances. In its application to the King County for Culture, Micah claimed the city of Mercer Island would give $2 million in capital funds and an unspecified amount of operating funds. Micah needs to tell the truth about who on the city council has promised them multi-million-dollar support in this time of city financial challenges. So I'm suspicious of what their claims today, and you know that I have the documents to prove everything I've said. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 2.
My name is Nancy Hewitt Spaeth. I live at 8320 Southeast 34th Street, and I'm speaking on Micah. Mercer Island has 475 acres of parkland and open spaces. Micah would use less than 1 acre, and that seems doable to me. And the closer they are to the center, it would be a blessing for town center. Micah would be. I raised my children on the island. My son played tennis, soccer, and many other sports. He enjoyed the use of the parks. My daughter performed at youth theater. She took clarinet lessons, for which I had to drive her off the island. She also took dance lessons. She would have been a perfect person for Micah. And I wished we'd had it then, and I hope we have it now. I recently took my granddaughter, who's 7 years old, who was adopted. My daughter adopted her from an orphanage in Uganda. And I had to drive off the island to take her to see Beauty and the Beast. After the play, she came out and Manny asked her, what did you like the best? And she said, all of it. She loved it. And now we're considering getting her some classes. So I really do believe in Micah. The arts teaches confidence to children. It teaches teamwork. And it's something that we need for the kids that aren't going to use the parks for sports. There are both boys and girls who go to the youth theater and would benefit from music lessons and dance at Micah. So I am a strong supporter, and I donate. So we need to help them by donating. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Karen Beck, 4813 East Mercer Way. I've stood here before. It was a couple of years ago. I stand here again in support of Micah, a strong supporter. And it occurs to me that there's a lot of issues that will never get 100%, be it light rail or a tunnel or access to our bridge. But it is what it is, and we just need to make our decisions and stand by them and move forward. And I stand here again as a supporter for Mercer Island and youth theater and all the arts on the island. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Carol Franz, and I live at 3260 80th Avenue Southeast. And I'm looking at some familiar faces. It's nice to see you. And I'd like to thank you as members of the community, as members of the City Council, for serving the community. I know it's a lot of work, and the pay is not all that much. I'd also like to say thank Ellie Human, your city deputy city clerk, for her answering my questions and being a great support and just lovely in dealing with me in every way. Many years ago, our community made it a commitment to having open spaces and forested areas. And when I researched it, not only have we met our goal on open spaces and forested areas, but we have exceeded it. And I'm so proud of us. I'm so proud of all the people who worked so hard for that. And I know that there are people in this room right now who worked really hard to make sure that happened, and I wanted to thank you. I would also like to thank the Mercer Island employees who are charged with the care of these lands. And I'm going to tell you their names because I called them up to make sure I could pronounce them correctly. Elena Somergren is the Natural Resources Manager. Andy Prince, the Trails and Urban Forest Manager. Kim Frappier, the Natural Resource Specialist who coordinates volunteers. And Hannah Van Pelt, the Arborist. So you can see that this community is really dedicated to their open spaces. And I want to reiterate that Mercer Island is a very, very special city. And I was going to acknowledge the artists, but they've already been acknowledged. There's a huge art community here, and they need a place for their art to be expressed. Manny, Connie, and Susan come to mind. I think this community is blessed and enriched with the gifts of the artists among us, and I am grateful for their presence in the city. So as you go out tonight, you will see a display which I created for this community. And this is how I feel about art. Art transcends time and place. Art speaks across boundaries and borders. Art is the universal language. Art is the gift we give our children. Mercer Island really is a special place, and I see both our woodlands and our artists as a vibrant and dynamic part of our community.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Stowe Sprague, and my daughter is with me. This is Martha.
Hi. So I'd just like to start off by saying it's really exciting for me to be here because I'm a big fan of Parks and Recreation, the TV show. I started as a YTN kid at age 3. Then cello took over my life. I perform and practice the cello over 30 hours a week. Where do I perform? Everywhere I can, and it's always off island. Even when I perform a piece in progress, I go to Kirkland. And this doesn't make sense to me because Mercer Island is so special because it's so central. Then why am I going off for everything? Anyway, I'm a sophomore now. In 2 years, I will go to college to study music performance. I really, really hope to perform on a MICA stage before I head off because I think it's really, really important. It's necessary for this because right now, like, we're not centralizing the arts when it's so central in so many people's lives. I think it's like the lack of these spaces is really stifling our progress.
I am head of the orchestra program at the high school booster club. That's grades 5th through 12th. There's 235 kids in that. And I want to bring up a couple of facts that you may not know. There is a huge theater at the high school, but just like the brand new JCC theater, it was acoustically tuned to please no one. Meaning it is half good for the spoken word and it's half good for the music. And for a musician like her, this is extremely disappointing. So for a grant, we did a grant, and we got those white soundboards for the back of the school auditorium at the high school. But I turned to the orchestra director and I said, Vicki, it sounds better in the classroom than on stage. So I am very, very hopeful that we could have a place that is tuned to musicians in MICA. Thank you very much.
So next up on the list, I have Bruce Lorig, speaker number 6. Bruce, are you still here in the building? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody stand up, so we will move forward. As we move on to speaker 7, can I have speakers 11 through 20 line up in the queue here? Thank you.
Hi, I'm not Bruce. I am Kelsey Joyce, 8420 Bonotho Place. I'm here as a Youth Theater Northwest mom. I recently wrote that in a community full of racehorses, Youth Theater Northwest had provided a place that was not only safe, but special and magical for my little unicorn. My little unicorn wanted to come tonight. For real, he was here 2 weeks ago talking about styrofoam. You might remember him. He wanted to come, but he's not here because he's actually at a Youth Theater Northwest workshop tonight. He's rehearsing for Through the Looking Glass. Please come see it, everyone. He'll be playing Violet. If anyone has not been persuaded by how valuable Youth Theater Northwest is to the community, I invite you, subject to all appropriate background checks, to drive the carpool, where you will see that not only are these children who are all ages, elementary school through high school, learning to interact with each other and perform on stage, they are actually learning skills that will serve them well throughout life in the boardroom when some of them don't make it on Broadway. I heard a couple things tonight that I didn't love, most of which I did love. The two things I didn't like were long slog, Councilmember Bassett, and then there were just some slides that made the process seem really, really long. So I did hear Councilmember Weicker suggest that our biggest resource or our biggest asset here is our people. I would agree with that, and I double down and say it's our children, and I would urge you all to move very quickly with Micah so that my fifth grader is still a child able to enjoy the new theater when it is ultimately built. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I wonder where her unicorn gets her talent. Or his, rather. My name's Genevieve Morton. I live on 7654 79th Avenue Southeast. I am a MICA board member and a newly elected co-chair. Out of respect for your time, I'm going to paraphrase some of my comments. My husband and I moved to Mercer Island shortly after we got engaged 11 years ago, in part because it was an ideal environment to raise a family, but also because he grew up here. One of the first philanthropic gifts that we made as a couple was to Peak, and this was long before we had children. But we recognized that something like Peak is the fabric of the community, and we hoped that one day we would utilize it. Now we have two children, ages 7 and 5. Yesterday I registered my 5-year-old for Little Sluggers. I was really excited about that, and it really brought me back to when Peak was just a vision on this island. It became a reality because of the support and the commitment of this community and the city. I'm here tonight to make the Arts Center a reality on Mercer Island. My children now play the piano and are in choir, and we move around different spaces, kind of like you heard from Martha, even going off the island. We're in churches, people's homes. On Sunday, I'm hosting a piano recital for I don't know how many people. I'm concerned about that. But this island and this community really deserves a dedicated place for the arts, not just for the children that we've heard a lot about tonight, but also for the adults and for the seniors. And it's more than just an art center. It's a gathering place for all of us to enjoy, to create, and to teach and celebrate all forms of arts. It's a place for concerts, a place for film screenings and lectures, and it's particularly important in this day of technology and disconnectedness. Our city needs a center heart. I'm honored to be a co-chair of MICA, and I'm 100% committed to working with you and the community to make this a reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Caroline Atkinson. I'm 16, and I'm the president of Students for MICA. Standing captivated in front of my TV at age 3 in my Seattle house, I belted the songs to The Wizard of Oz and imagined my future self in a costume, singing and dancing up on a stage. When I was in 3rd grade, my parents announced we were moving to Mercer Island. As a very stubborn 8-year-old, I was completely opposed to a new school, new friends, and a new life. Hoping to change my mind, my parents brought me to Youth Theater Northwest for a production on Mercer Island. I was captivated. I had never seen a show with a cast of all children. In the car ride home, I knew if those kids could be in a real play, so could I. I was cast in my first show 3 months later. I loved the whole process, from the first rehearsal to closing night. I was enthralled by the notion that I could put on a costume and sing and dance and perform in front of an audience. What I had envisioned for myself years earlier had started to happen, and after 13 YTN shows over the last 8 years, I used performances as milestones, marking my memories and achievements. YTN is a magical place where I always feel loved and welcomed. The friends I have made there are some of my favorite people on the planet. While we are different in age, gender, and background, we share a love of the arts, and we found each other at YTN. I'm incredibly grateful to the arts for the life skills I've gained. Memorizing lines and harmonies develops my work ethic and ability to assimilate information. Learning how to elicit audience reactions enhances my public and conversational speaking skills. Attending 16 hours of rehearsal per week strengthens my time management and prioritization techniques. When my heart broke when I didn't get my dream role, I learned how to grapple with disappointment and accept loss graciously and respectfully. I believe these skills are a direct result from the arts in my life. Mercer Island is an academic and sports-focused city with no dedicated public spaces for creative arts kids like me. YTN lost its home almost 4 years ago, and the staff has been working double time to help kids get a real theater experience. The arts make the community healthy for everyone, providing creativity, freedom of expression, new and different perspectives, and add beauty and joy to everyday living. The arts are a magnet that attracts and retains Mercer Island residents, and a source of joy and pride for our community. The arts provide a shared experience that bonds and connects. I know there are people in the audience who don't think the city should invest in the arts, and I respectfully and strongly disagree. As one of the tenets of Mercer Island City's mission is to enhance the quality of life for its residents, the city must invest in the arts. The arts are for all people, young people looking for a voice, the marginalized and struggling, families seeking a cultural experience, individuals with years of wisdom, and 3-year-old girls singing in front of their TV. Our community is at a crossroads. The time to act is now. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Pradi Misra, and I live at 8035 West Mercer Way. I've lived on this island for 17 years, and I remember last time I was up here speaking in front of a council was for peak, and the room was as packed, by the way, and people outside. Same the case here again. My wife, Sheila, and I raised 2 boys here on the island. They went to school here. They've been from all the schools had to offer, including arts and sports. In terms of the community engagement, I was on the school's foundation board for 5 years. I served on the Fine Arts Advisory Council. I was part of the group which helped bring the peak here. And I've seen firsthand what happens when we rally community around a shared vision. I'll give you a few examples. We crossed the 1 million per year mark at school's foundation. We used to raise about 300,000 in those days. Then we built a top-notch baseball field with the storage and the batting cages. My kids loved it. We took the band to the Rose Bowl way back then, and we're doing it again now. We brought a robotics club to the high school. And, of course, we brought the peak here. Each of them have been a hard, not to say long slog, but definitely a challenging effort. But they were all worth it. I mean, people enjoy them, and we wonder whatever happened to all the controversy. Because I think when we come together, controversies just disappear. If you look at them as to way to find solutions. I wrote a bunch of other stuff here, but I think we heard about YTN a lot. I can't top that for just before. So let me take it to the next step, which I thought which might appeal and often goes unnoticed. Numerous studies have shown that medical and health benefits of the arts for the kids and adults, far beyond simply creating or enjoying art. And these are all studies available in a prestigious journal. All you have to do is just Google it. You'll find them, tons of them. Okay. Among kids, the art encourages creative thinking and problem solving, increases empathy and tolerances, raises their self-esteem, and makes them better students for life. Who wouldn't want that for their children, or any children for that matter? Among older adults, which of course goes kind of unnoticed, but art can help people with depression and anxiety and boost their confidence, and this has been shown that it leads to the improved memory, reasoning, and resilience. important things to having a quality of life. Having a dedicated space for arts enables everyone in the community, whether you're a child, whether you're a family, young family, you're an adult, or you're a senior citizen, access easier and affordable access to art and reap its benefits in the way they want and they deserve. It's a win-win-win for our community, our kids, and our artists. So art needs a place to happen. And we collectively have the responsibility and, hitting everybody else, also the capability to make it happen. So what are we waiting for?
Thank you. I'm going to ask you just to wrap up.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Meg Lippert, 4052 94th Avenue Southeast. The purpose of my statement this evening is to correct and clarify the record. Although we are in the midst of a, quote, MICA pause, end quote, MICA's recently updated website still includes the site of the building as in Mercerdale Park. Of additional concern is that the area of parkland that MICA wants is inaccurately portrayed in recent public documents. For example, in one recent public document, it was stated that the parkland area MICA wants is simply, quote, the city's former recycling center, end quote, not even mentioning Bicentennial Park or the Native Garden. Also, in the agenda bill for this evening's study session, the site is referred to as, quote, the recycling center / Bicentennial Park site, end quote. However, this description still does not accurately represent the huge area of parkland that is mentioned on MICA's website as their site. In the future, to be fully accurate, when referring to, quote, MICA site, end quote, all three parcels of land, the former recycling center, Bicentennial Park, and the Native Garden, close to an acre of parkland, should be included and referenced. This is important because while the concerned citizens from Mercer Island Parks have tried to educate the public about exactly how much of Mercerdale and Bicentennial Parks is threatened, there is still some understandable confusion. This confusion is not surprising because, to my knowledge, there has never been a floor plan staked out on the land for all citizens to see, and the markers placed by the surveyors have, for the most part, disappeared. Both Bicentennial Park and the Native Garden, which are often not included in descriptions of the proposed MICA site, are precious community assets. Both complement other elements of Mercerdale Park and should be included whenever the land MICA wants to use is mentioned. Other areas of Mercerdale Park are focused on active use: the huge lawn for sports and games, the skate park, the train park playground, the exercise stations, even the perimeter path, often the site of first-time two-wheeler lessons. And the pergola is treasured as a cultural and civic performance site. Bicentennial Park and the Native Garden are different. They provide important respite from the active areas of the park. Both provide essential balance for the activity of the other areas. Both encourage rest and reflection. Hidden for years from public view by invasive blackberries, the Native Garden has now been completely cleared by community volunteers under the direction of our Parks Department. Volunteers have so far donated over 300 hours of volunteer labor and are still going strong. I encourage you to visit the Native Garden this week, to take a walk along the pathways, to sit on benches and listen for hummingbirds. Check the entrance signs to see the native plants. Enjoy your public parkland. It is yours. Hopefully, it will be yours forever.
Thank you. Welcome.
Ed Peppo, 5734 91st Avenue Southeast, for 50-plus years. I consider myself a Mercer Island resident. I was thrilled to death to hear the tenor of this particular meeting. I came with apprehension that it would be negative, and I would like to congratulate and compliment Julie Underwood for making this possible, and thank the council for agreeing to the pause, as well as MICA. They are to be congratulated for their openness and their willingness to at least make this a two-way street. I got involved because it wasn't a two-way street. It was a one-way street, and it was a totally negative proposition that was going, and the citizens were not being involved at all. I am 100% in favor of MICA, the arts, and the culture. I had my interview for the Mercer Island job, where I taught for 42 years and total of 52 years coaching and teaching. And I had my interview on a park bench at the Seattle Center. I had brought 2 busloads of students up from Longview to the Repertory Theater to watch The Importance of Being Earnest. And my interview was there, and I must have done the job because I got the job, and they didn't fire me for 42 years, so that was cool. I'm a Marine. I taught for 42 years. I had 4 children that went through Mercer Island High School, played all kinds of things and did all kinds of things. I love the school. I have 3 grandkids that went through the school. I got 3 more grandkids that I'd like to get through the school, and 3 great-grandkids that I'd like to get through the school. All of them I would like to have involved with MICA. When I was a puppy, I tap danced. I played the piano. I wanted to play the piano, but my folks gave me a violin to play because I went to 16 elementary schools, and they thought the piano would be hard to carry every place that we went. I sang in the Everett Community College choir. So unfortunately, when I first got involved with this, I was told that if I'm not in favor of MICA at Mercerdale Park, I was against kids and I was against the arts. I don't think that's anything that I've given you as my resume would indicate that I was against kids or the arts. I'm 100% for MICA. A lot of people have talked about MICA, and the key thing here is MICA needs not to. We need not to pay Peter to pay Paul. We need to find a place for MICA that will satisfy everybody, and I'll do anything I can to help in that endeavor.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Judy Kimmelman. I live at 9242 Southeast 46th Street. I've lived on Mercer Island for over 20 years, and I remember when our realtor was showing us around the island, she proudly said, there's a youth theater on Mercer Island. I had no idea how important that would be for my kids. Both my kids were involved at YTN from a very young age through high school. At YTN, they learned really important leadership skills. They learned to express creativity. They found an incredible community, and they've become lifelong lovers of the arts. Both my kids continued in theater through university, and my daughter can attest, who will speak next, can attest to how important an influence it's been in her life. And those who participate in the audience also are exposed to the theater, which is equally important. YTN is a gem in our community. We have an opportunity here to leave a legacy with MICA. I think we need to really take advantage of that. I want future kids to have the opportunities that my kids have, and I think we can't afford to lose YTN.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kaya McCruer, and I grew up at 9242 Southeast 46th Street. I believe that I am an example of both the opportunities that YTN affords the students of Mercer Island, as well as the debts that so many of the proud graduates of both Mercer Island Public Schools and YTN owe to YTN and its staff. It has had a profound impact on my life, and I can honestly say that there is absolutely no way I would have been as successful in college, would now be working at a nonprofit giving back to my community without the lessons in leadership, in confidence, in communication, and teamwork that I learned at YTN. But YTN also offers something that is really, really essential, I believe, to the students of Mercer Island, which is a safe haven for students who feel bullied, who feel that they need somewhere to go where they will always be accepted no matter who they are and what they believe. And I believe that YTN is that place. So I want to thank you for both your short-term support of YTN as well as your long-term support, I hope, of MICA. And I want to encourage you to find a quick solution that will keep YTN alive in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello. My name is Ann Thompson. I live at 9030 Southeast 64th Street.
My grandparents moved to Mercer Island in 1963. My dad and his brother went through Mercer Island schools. My siblings and I did, and now I raise 3 children, and all 4 generations currently still live on Mercer Island. We've been involved with the youth theater almost since its inception, from audience members the first season 35 years ago, classes. My parents and I have both been board members in the past, still season ticket holders and donors. I think many people in the community, while they support youth theater in the abstract, don't understand what youth theater lost when the school district took back their property 4 years ago. I've heard many conversations and read them on Nextdoor where people say, why can't they be at the high school? Why can't they be at the JCC or the Boys and Girls Club, or even Luther Burbank? Youth theater had a 200-seat theater with a full lighting board, wing space, dressing rooms. They had a smaller black box theater which allowed them to run shows simultaneously. They had dressing rooms and storage for sets and costumes and office space. That was all encompassed in one building and cannot be met by other theaters that are also currently have a full program going on. I believe they do 11 shows a year. I am a huge proponent of MICA, having done youth theater as a child, having danced with Susan Valencia and the Children's Dance Conservatory, having done piano lessons where you're in a church basement, or a dance recital where you're at Sunnybeam, or the youth theater before they even did their 1999 renovation at the old North Mercer Junior High. These were all subpar spaces, and what does that tell our children about how we value the arts? Especially when I drive by Island Crest Park every single day, and I've seen the renovations going on for our sports fields there, and I know the city put in, I think it was about $1.5 million, and I hope that we can give that much back to our students. I think it's wonderful. We have this amazing MICA board who wants to do all of the fundraising on their own, but I hope the city will step up, because we certainly support our sports players by putting money into sports fields and basketball courts and tennis courts. And where are our children who love music and theater and dance? Where do they get to perform? Church basements and parish halls. It just feels like we don't respect what they do, and we can't say we respect the arts when we don't respect our children who are trying to become artists. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, James Rudolph, 5222 West Mercer Way, new MICA board member. I did not grow up on Mercer Island, but I am very happy to be raising my family here. I am a father to 3 boys, 8, 5, and 7 months. So I look at this speaking opportunity as a little bit of vacation. I'm sure my wife would agree, even though she might not believe that I'm doing anything. But I will say the arts are important. I'm 100% behind MICA and figuring out a way to come up with a solution that works in this community. My mom, when I was growing up, tried everything in her power: piano lessons, guitar, drums. I tortured every potential teacher that came my way. It just was not something that was in my DNA, and that's okay. My 3 boys, I don't know what is going to happen with what trajectory they want in life, and what skills they tend to embrace. They're very creative. They surprise me every day. And I just want the facilities that I know this community can rally around and wants. Maybe there's this silent majority that is not quite shown up, and it's because maybe the vision wasn't quite there. And I'm excited to join the board with some really talented people that have a vision and are going to get things done. And that's something that I'm actually excited for, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, so as we move on to speaker 18, I'm going to go ahead and invite speaker numbers 21 through 30 to go ahead and queue up. Thank you.
Welcome.
My name is Jean Dunn-Babbitt. I live at 3049 71st Avenue Southeast. I'm actually a supporter of MICA and a supporter of Mercerdale Park. I love the arts. I play the violin, played in the school orchestra. My daughter-in-law had 100 music students piano students at one time. We're a very arty family. I also love the park, and I don't want to see the park given away. And I was so thrilled tonight when I heard they turn. Did I really hear that they promised they're not going to put it in the park, or was I imagining that? Oh, maybe I was. Okay. But anyway, I just wanted to go over the history of the many times the park's been attacked. In '73, the school district owned Mercerdale Park, and they wanted to sell it for a commercial development. A vote was required. Islanders voted no. 14 years later, in 1987, a group of Islanders, including 2 MICA board members, advocated building the city hall in Mercerdale Park. Again, the Islanders voted no. 10 years ago, in 1997, a unanimous city council decided to have a new fire station in Mercerdale Park. After the petition drive gathered thousands of signatures, the city council backed down, rebuilt the fire station in the current location. Unfortunately, after each of these victories in defending Mercerdale Park from development, there was not an effort to permanently protect the park, since we know that otherwise the park will again be attacked. In the summer of in 2015, MICA announced plans to build a huge art center, 270 feet long, stretching 150 feet back into the hillside and 35 feet high, with almost an acre of Mercerdale Park and the Bicentennial Park. So as concerned citizens, which I am, and also a supporter of MICA, I'm even a friend of MICA, I just do not want it in the park. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We want to encourage all people to share their opinions. If we could refrain from comment, thank you. Welcome.
My name is Peter Struck, residing at 9130 Southeast 54th Street. Good evening. I have a few comments tonight for your consideration. First, many thanks to our city manager for holding the recently concluded study session on the MICA pause. As you can judge by the crowd tonight, this matter remains a concern for many. In its January 26th letter, the city and MICA spoke of how bringing the community together is vital to city interests this year. I believe MICA can take 2 simple steps to achieve that goal, as well as realizing their own goal of developing a private performance space. First, if MICA is sincere in its effort to have a restart, it should immediately withdraw from the current MOU and thereby take the Mercerdale Park site off the table. Anything short of that, one has to assume that MICA's unspoken desire is to build in the park. And therefore, quite frankly, this restart is a waste of time and energy. Now, I know this is perhaps a difficult pill to swallow for MICA, as they have spent many thousands of dollars evaluating that site over the past 2 years. But if one is truly honest, that effort revealed many problems with that site, as you're probably well aware. However, as many economists are wont to say, at this point those are sunk costs, and they're not truly relevant to the discussion going forward. Second, if the MICA goal is to provide a permanent home for the arts, as we've heard so eloquently tonight, I believe they'll achieve that goal much more readily by moving forward without the explicit support of resources or subsidies from the city. We are all well aware of the ever-growing financial challenges the city is facing, as well as the rapidly rising tax burden on its citizens. Right-sizing the project and budget so that it can be managed strictly as a private endeavor will allow MICA to truly control its own destiny. Thus, to reiterate, 2 relatively straightforward decisions by MICA: tear up the MOU and don't rely on or wait for the city for support, will encourage the community to come together and support the effort going forward. As city leaders, I urge you to use your influence and leverage to help get this accomplished. Thank you, and we look forward to moving ahead together.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Sue Sherwood. I live at 7444 West Mercer Way. It was a real surprise to me, and frankly a disappointment, when we moved here in 1980 to discover that there was no city-sponsored arts commission or arts council, nor any gallery space for exhibiting the work of some of the fine local artists. Mercer Island was, we understood, an advantaged community where education of the children was a serious focus. The arts reflect the core value of a community. A vital piece was missing. Thankfully, Larry Rose, the city manager at that time, had a rich cultural background and was able to accomplish some amazing growth opportunities for the arts in the community that he served prior to coming to Mercer Island. He knew the arts were critical to a healthy community, and he had immediate support from the members of the City Council, who also understood that arts bring us together. I will always be grateful for Larry's vision and leadership, for he was a pathfinder for the creation of the Mercer Island Arts Council, and was delighted when the innovative idea became reality, using the hallway in the former community center as the gallery. He would be delighted today with the beautiful exhibits our Arts Council mounts in our very busy community center. Our community is fortunate to have current pathfinders working hard to create the Mercer Island Center for the Arts. We need you all of you council members elected in 2018, to also be pathfinders, to have a fire in your belly and stand firm in your conviction to bring new and exciting vitality to our community. Please see what so many in our community are seeing. This moment is in our midst. The opportunity is in your hands.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Teresa Yvonne, 1818 Markham Avenue Northeast from Tacoma, Washington. I'm actually the executive director of the new Federal Way Performing Arts and Events Center, and I was asked to come speak to you. I'm going to take it from a different tactic in the sense that I hear a lot of support for the Arts Center here. But in Federal Way, one of the reasons that we did it was because of economic development. So we have been open as of this Friday a short 5 months. So what I will tell you is in the month of December, I had nearly 10,000 people come through the facility. We had 23 days straight of either events, performances, or rehearsal in the facility. With the 6 performances of Nutcracker over 2 weekends, we had 3,000 people come through the facility. So if you put that in economic terms, if each one of those folks that come through, according to Americans for the Arts, you can go in and do it based on your community and size and all of that. It's averaged out to $21 per person of dollars that gets spent in your community for every single attendee to an arts performance. So I know that you also are looking at education and other things that you've got going on in your community, but I highly recommend that you take a look at the economic factors. I heard someone make a comment about tax dollars, and that is tax dollars that get infused into your community by building a center. So I encourage you, and if any of you would like to come down and take a look at the brand new facility, the carpet still smells new. I encourage any of you to come down. I don't know how long it's going to smell that new. I can't guarantee it, but please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to give you a tour. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Lynn Abelhausen. I live at 4625 89th Avenue Southeast, and I'm here tonight in support of Micah. Haven't been to the City Council building before. I drive by it every day, but I felt like it was important to lend my voice to something that's important to me and not just be a voice in the shadows of somebody who supports but doesn't feel like it's really making a difference. And so I concur with speaker number 7 and her unicorn and encourage you to find an expedient solution to this. It seems like it's been going on for a long time. I know it's difficult, but sooner rather than later seems important for Youth Theater Northwest. Thank you.
Thank you. Manny, welcome.
Hello. My name is Manny, and I'm honored to be the Executive Director for Youth Theater Northwest. I have so much gratitude for my organization, for your open ears, for your passion for our children, for your commitment to our program. I did have some prepared remarks, but I feel the conversation has changed, so I may riff a little bit. Football teams need a football field. Basketball players need a court. Swimmers need a pool. And what do actors need? They need a theater. Some people may argue that the magic of theater can be created in a cafeteria or a banquet hall, but that's just not the truth. I could give you plenty of reasons how it's been challenging for us for the last couple of years, trying to make our program sustainable and still powerful and relevant for our kids despite all the obstacles. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just pick out a few that really resonated with me. We had a child this last season, and she bravely got on stage despite her Tourette's. With amazing control, she stifled all of her vocal tics while she was performing on stage, to our amazement. But then she would step off stage, the platforms that we call a stage, and she would go backstage when we don't have backstage, where really there's the only thing hiding her from the audience was a curtain. And it was there that she could not stifle her sounds. And was also there where her fellow castmates couldn't come up and congratulate her because they were amazed that she was able to get through her performance. We need a theater. The children need to be able to be backstage and to be able to talk and laugh. We need a theater where they can be in their dressing room and get ready and have that private moment before they muster all of their energy to get on stage and to perform. The last few years have also been challenging because of all the programs and kids we cannot serve. The school day matinees we can't offer, where we used to serve about 800 to 1,000 kids a year because, well, our theater is now also a classroom for a lunchroom for the preschools at Emmanuel Church. But despite all this, year after year, our children put everything they have into their work and into the unique and loving community that they form at YTN. And all that we're asking is that you can please provide them some hope that we can have a home here and the programs they love will continue. A little bit with regret, the kids that first came to the meetings that we started here years ago are now about to graduate. But we still have kids every year that look towards Micah as a home. As I'm standing here before you, 17 students are at the Mercer Island Methodist Church working with expert artists that we brought to Mercer Island from Japan. And our teens are at Emmanuel Episcopal Church rehearsing their production of Putnam County Spelling Bee. Imagine what we could do if all of our obstacles were eliminated and we were just given the basic resources to create theater, to nurture our children, and to build community. Imagine all that YTN could be. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. Al Lippert, 4052 94th Avenue Southeast. We have listened and heard Micah and the city commit to find a new site not in Mercerdale Park for the Arts Center. We applaud and appreciate the new direction. However, as long as the Memorandum of Understanding and proposed lease between the city and Micah exists, Mercerdale Park is threatened. Personally, my wife and I are fans of the arts. My wife, a performing artist who teaches storytelling to graduate students, is a small business owner on the island. Her business, Story Power, offers storytelling programs and residencies. She has worked on 6 continents. As for me, I love listening to music, especially to Joni Mitchell songs. You may be familiar with Joni Mitchell's 1970s song about the destruction of trees and native habitat and the loss and regret that comes from paving paradise. We have our own version of her song for you tonight. I thought you probably, after all this time, needed an intermission. Mercer Island musician Patrick Dougherty. Wait for it. Patrick's song, Save Mercerdale Park, continues the legacy of the arts as a powerful way to wake people up to social, environmental, and global issues. The arts have reached and moved people from all cultures to wake up and take action. And we hope that Patrick's performance will give you insight and move you to take immediate and positive action to protect our own public parkland before it is too late. Patrick first performed Save Mercerdale Park right here on Mercer Island during summer celebration last year. Since then, he has performed it on numerous occasions to a variety of Mercer Island audiences. The message always strongly resonates, as citizens are committed to save Mercerdale Park. Patrick's modification of Joni's lyrics expressed the threat to Mercerdale Park from private development and our concerns for our community, park's future. Patrick, you need time to tune up, or are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Dougherty.
Patrick Dougherty, 4135 Boulevard Place, Mercer Island. For the past 20 years, I've volunteered to perform for the Senior Social Service for the Parks and Recs Department. So this song goes out to all the artists on the island who want to preserve open space and public parks. Save Mercerdale, don't ruin a town center park with a giant building and a community kept in the dark. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? Save Mercerdale Park. We gotta save Mercerdale Park. Don't chop down the trees and threaten precious wetland for a private building on community parkland. And don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? We gotta save Mercerdale Park. We gotta save Mercerdale Park. Hey, City Council, hear what we're trying to say. This is public parkland and you know it needs to stay that way. And don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? We gotta save Mercerdale Park. We gotta save Mercerdale Park. And don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? Save Mercerdale Park. Save Mercerdale Park. When is Micah gonna find another location? Maybe near that new light rail station. And don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you've got till it's gone? Save Mercerdale Park. We gotta save Mercerdale Park. We gotta save Mercerdale, we gotta save Mercerdale Park. Thank you.
All right, can I please call up speakers number 31 through 40, please? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tova at 9023 Southeast 37th Street, Mercer Island. I guess you could say I grew up at the Youth Theater Northwest. I was part of that very first production of The Wizard of Oz and involved with many productions after that throughout my tweens and teens. It's interesting to think about my colleagues now and where we all are after those early days. Some are teachers, one's a storyteller, some are working actors in theater, film, TV. You would even call one a celebrity. Some are running successful kids' drama programs, one's a singer-songwriter geared towards kids, and many of us have day jobs and do what we can to be creative on the side. But I would argue that where we've ended up, that's not the point. It's the journey we took, as some of these eloquent young women have stated already, and specifically the lessons we learned as part of the youth theater community that is important here. It's learning how to work together, how to collaborate, how to be a team. It was learning how to take rejection when you didn't get the part you was sure were in the bag. It was learning persistence, the value of practice when a tricky step or bit finally came together. It was learning the value of creativity itself, its power to inspire, to teach, to enrich. Sure, these are lessons that some of my colleagues, my classmates, learned on the soccer field, on the tennis court, but that would never have been my place or hundreds of thousands of the unicorns like me. And it saddens me to think that it's possible that in this rich community, this community of privilege, we can't value the arts enough, respect the lessons they teach, the community they create, to make a space for the youth theater and the other arts organizations that will thrive as part of MICA. My daughter just participated in her first youth theater production this summer, The Music Man. Yes, we have come full circle. To think about her not being able to continue her journey there is unacceptable and frankly deeply frustrating. I support the efforts of this theater by and for children, and I hope you do too, can see its value for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thanks. I'm Bharat Sham, 8405 Southeast 34th Place. I've lived on the island for about 20 years. I have a brother who lives on the island, and my mom lives on the island in the warm months. I'm on the board of YTN. I'm also on the board of Friends of Luther Burbank Park. I've worked to, my kids have benefited, my daughters benefited a lot from YTN in all the ways that you've heard, and my nephew and niece benefit from YTN. I've pulled out umpteen amounts of ivy on the Mercerdale hillside. I pick up litter, probably as much litter as anyone else has in the parks of the island. I walk around in the parks of the island all the time. I work with IRA to publicize and oppose some of the things that were happening a long time ago in city government, and I supported and voted for Dan Grouse every time. I voted for Bruce. I also voted for Tom Acker. I supported both of them. And so I consider myself as someone who is capable of basically looking at data and then trying to come up with something in the middle or something that makes sense, and I don't think of myself as ideological. And with that context, I want to sort of bring up a couple of points. I really understand where all the Mercerdale people are coming from, Mercerdale Park people, and I think that those who are doing it, those who are supporting their point of view respectfully, I salute, and I'd like to help them and support them. But I want to sort of call out the kind of rhetoric that made me sort of get rid of my Nextdoor account. I have this comment here from a person who says, the city is up to something. It's like United Flight 93. Take charge before control is lost to the bad guys. Who are these terrorists? Like you folks? Us? You know, my father was actually killed by Al-Qaeda. And to see this kind of rhetoric come into our community makes me really sad. And I think it behooves all of us to reject that kind of rhetoric, to have a respectful discussion, and for people in the city council, and I'm going to tell Tom as well, that, you know, if you have campaign contributions from people who speak like that, reject it, disavow it, and have a productive conversation. The other point I'd like to make is that there's all this discussion about how the city should not contribute to MICA. but we spend all this money on football, and on softball, on baseball, on soccer, and I personally have no desire to ever see a football game in my life. But I'm supportive of our football team, I'm supportive of our band, and so similarly, I think this is very much a community effort, and we should support it from the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Sarah Ford at 8405 Southeast 34th Place. Don't have anything prepared. My husband signed me up to speak, but just wanted to say that Mercer Island is recognized nationally for our schools. People are drawn here all the time for our schools. We're evidently now recognized by Money Magazine as a great place to live, and I think it's time for us to be recognized as a place that really supports the arts. It's long overdue. I think it's very, very appropriate for the city to be supporting that. I'm excited to see that it's part of the city plan to be focused on the arts. And especially, I do want to put in a plug for finding a solution sooner rather than later for youth theater, because the last 4 years they've lost a lot of ground. It's really been unfortunate and disappointing to see. They're very creative and they do magical things with the resources they have, but it's just unfortunate to see them losing ground. So put in the plug for youth theater. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Danny Glasser, and I live at 7416 West Mercer Way. I've been a resident of Mercer Island for 17 years, and my 4 children have participated in a variety of athletic and artistic pursuits on the island, including Youth Theater Northwest and more than a decade at Island Youth Ballet. IYB was one of the users of the former YTN building, and its loss has been palpable. I'm speaking tonight to make sure that the City Council hears in person and above the cacophony of social media, local press, and I assume your email inboxes from islanders such as myself who are strong supporters of the Mercer Island Center of the Arts. I hope we can move forward soon with a plan to invest in the arts locally by building this facility, this community resource, in the town center with the support of the city. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your service to the Mercer Island community.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Suzanne Czar, and I'm a resident on the South End, but I feel like I live at 2441 76th Avenue Southeast, Suite 160. I didn't prepare anything, but I feel compelled to speak on behalf of not just local resident and parent, but as someone is very integrated into the town center, a local retailer, architect, creative, and I have a front-end art gallery where we've had this grassroots movement in the town center to launch. Initially, it was first Thursdays, now it's first Fridays, and they've been coined as micro MICA moments that we're experiencing in our art gallery. I'm surprised by what a venue it's become. The need for a place to gather, have cultural exchange, and express ourselves is very evident in my experience in less than 2 years as part of the town center. I'm encouraged by the conversation that we've been having this evening. I'm fully confident there's a solution on the horizon, and I'm in full support of MICA. And I also have to mention I am a design commissioner. I don't speak on behalf of the commission. This is me speaking personally, but in full disclosure. But I will do everything I can as a local resident, business owner, mother, and my daughter is very active in the youth theater. We believe very much in the arts and the importance of that as part of our community and development as a whole. So thank you for your service.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Janice Cohen. I live at 4655 90th Avenue Southeast. I'm here primarily to ask that Mercerdale Park should be saved as a park. I was glad to hear that Micah is considering other sites. It was not clear to me from their presentation if Mercerdale Park is now safe from development. I think Mercerdale Park is a very important part of the downtown part of our island. It's where many people walk and play and meet, in fact. And I would ask that the council do everything it can to save it from development. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Jackie Dunbar, 7116 82nd Avenue Southeast. Monday, January 29th, 2018, I attended the City of Mercer Island's meeting titled City's Financial Challenges. Houston, we have a problem. The gist of the presentation was this: if Mercer Island residents do not vote for a tax increase in 2018, the city will have to lay off 25% of the city's workforce in 2019 through 24 to balance the city's operating budget, which will result in a loss of services to citizens. What was asked by citizens attending but not addressed by the city was if there was any internal process to ensure the city was working lean, nor were there any proposals made to prevent the city from finding itself in a similar budgeting situation in the future. About 35% of Mercer Island residents are retired persons. That means in the fall of 2018, many retired Mercer Island citizens will have to make difficult choices between their own personal budgets and voting to give the City of Mercer Island more tax money, as the city will be requesting. During the February 22, 2016 City Council meeting, at which the MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, was approved with MICA, former council member Dan Grouse stated that MICA had been working with the city for 2 years on this project. The very first full MICA board meeting was held March 15, 2014, in the Mercer Island City Council chambers. That means 4 years of city employees' time have been spent on MICA. Has this in any way contributed to the budget crisis in the city that the city now faces? I do not know. And has it helped with the budget crisis? I also do not know. It's time for the intermingling of Mercer Island city government and MICA to stop. If there are Mercer Island residents who have a vision and a desire and who want to fund MICA with their own private money, they would be applauded by the community for their generosity. However, to insist that Mercerdale public parkland worth perhaps millions of dollars, and that is a possibility over the 50 to 80-year lease in the MOU, to be given away for $1 a year is physically irresponsible. Add to that the possible financial burden to every Mercer Island taxpayer if the Arts Center cannot meet its ongoing operating expenses. All Mercer Island citizens should be able to participate in funding MICA to the extent they desire, with each of them deciding the amount they feel financially comfortable donating. MICA should be affordable without public funds. This response should not be taken by anyone to mean that I oppose or do not value art in our community, but rather if islanders want art to survive and thrive, we need to recognize that we have budget constraints and live within them. Art should be a community affair that everyone can support. Mercerdale Park should be taken off the table as a site for MICA's building. I encourage all citizens to attend the next community-wide meeting at the Community Center February the 10th to listen to the city's budget presentation. The meeting is scheduled from 9:30 in the morning till 12:30. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Back of the line. My name is Alan Reed. I'm from Emmanuel Episcopal Church, where I am the outgoing senior warden of 4486th Avenue Southeast. I want to come tonight to speak on behalf of Youth Theater Northwest. Frankly, I don't know if MICA is the answer to all of our troubles or not. I don't know where to build it, and I don't know where all the money comes from. And I know there's a lot more discussion to happen on those topics. But what I do know is that Youth Theater Northwest needs and deserves our support. YTN is a vibrant and contributing member of our community, and the service they provide to children, we've heard it here today, and their families is irreplaceable. It would be sorely missed if YTN would end up having to move away. As you may know, for the past 3+ years following the loss of their space at North Mercer, YTN has been a tenant of ours at Emmanuel Church. Supporting YTN fits into the church's mission to support the growth and development of children and to provide recognition and support for all things of beauty in God's community. It doesn't fit quite as well into the physical space. Currently, YTN has their offices on our campus, has transformed our parish hall into a black box theater. Other areas of our church are used for classes, rehearsals, and yeah, there's still a 70-foot long roof structure parked in our parking lot, which may or may not become a planned focus of beauty for a new facility if and when and where it gets built. You know, this was not the plan that either YTN or Emmanuel Church had for our respective organizations 5 or 10 years ago, but it is our opportunity to do what we can to keep the doors open and the lights on. So it's our experience, what I would say, living together, that creates this foundation for my advocacy. The reason I am here is I've seen this work firsthand, and I'm convinced that we should do what we can to keep YTN here on Mercer Island. And I know that's not as easy as it sounds. YTN is not just another after-school program, some place for kids to hang out or be in a safe, supervised place during the hours between schools end and when mom and dad pick them up. During those hours, instead, these kids learn and master new skills and gain supportive mentorship to become stronger and to become the kinds of adults that we want them to be. You know, a lot of learning these days is focused on science, technology, and technical learning. But there are so many things that are fundamentally human, and we need the human skills as well. That's what we need to have in order to live successfully together in community. And I think how much better off we are when our kids move forward with these new skills. So I know this conversation is bigger than just YTN is a good program. It's about if and how and when this community can support the development of an arts center, and I just look forward to seeing that happen. Thanks for taking on this good work.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll welcome up speakers 41 through 50, please.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'm Klaus Jensen at 9325. Oops.
Just wait just a second.
It's okay.
As you'd like.
Anyway, you know who I am.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say anything tonight. I just came as an observer. And it's interesting to me because how can anybody be against performing arts? I grew up during World War II in Denmark. I had never heard a piece of classical music until I was about late teens. And eventually I ended up taking my wife, myself, we became opera nuts. Went to Vienna every year to hear the opera, went to Paris to hear the music, etc., etc. But performing arts are in big trouble in this country, and I think it's wonderful to give them a chance. But there's a conundrum and a 500 gorilla here in the room tonight, and that is the fact that we are intermingled with the Mercer Park. It would seem to me, as the other speakers have suggested, take the MOU and wipe it out. It's in your power. And then end this relationship between the city council and a private business. We all support the idea of MICA. I hope they can build a facility somewhere else, take it out of the park, protect the park. Otherwise, we'll have another 2 or 3 years of Mercer Islanders against Mercer Islanders, and that's not right. So I suggest that you do what's in your power and take that step. The other thing I would say, and I echo some of my senior speakers here tonight, and the 25% of whatever it is the Mercer Islands population is growing are seniors over 60 and up. And we all live on fixed budgets. Some of us are fortunate enough, and I'm fortunate enough, that's not a concern. But there's certainly a lot of people that bought a little starter home here, and today that starter home might be worth $1 million. That's meaningless for somebody who wants to stay here, unless they want to move to North Dakota or God forbid, Mar-a-Lago. So, take that into your consideration too, and maybe I would again say to you, it would behoove you to have a study session on the budget. Mercer Island deserves that too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Bill James. I'm at 4301 86th Avenue Northeast. It seems that it's obligatory to begin with your bona fides. I moved here in the early 80s. My kids went to Island Park Elementary, the middle school, both graduated from high school. My son graduated from Art Center College of Design in Pasadena. My daughter graduated with a degree in radio, TV, and film from the University of Texas. I used to sing, I'll spare you that. Someone mentioned, one of the councilmen, I believe, that they'd never seen a bigger crowd than this. Well, I remember when they tried to take the green belt in open space at Gallagher Hill, and the crowd was much larger than the earlier crowd here. And I remember when they tried to take the green space and the open space at Pioneer Park and build a golf course. Well, the crowd was a lot bigger then. And they've tried to take this park 3 or 4 times. It's important, I think, that you understand that probably no one here is opposed to the arts. Certainly you can see from my background and my kids' background that we're not, our family's not. But arts organizations and governments, local, state, and federal, throughout the country are experiencing financial difficulties. And taking this parkland and building an expensive facility will not solve those financial difficulties. Taking parkland and building expensive facilities is not the answer to solving your financial difficulties. The island has space to construct a facility where the community center is now, with an adjacent parking lot and with an adjacent park. Many of the speakers throughout this 2 or 3 year period have framed the issue as those who support the arts versus those who oppose the arts. We all know that the way an issue is framed often influences the outcomes. No one here is opposed to the arts, and it insults the citizens of this town to frame the issue that way. I would encourage you to be the council that both saved the park and built a facility. That can be done by expanding the community center with its hundreds of parking spaces, its very open acreage, and its access to the existing park. You can be the council that's finally saved Mercerdale Park and finally built an art center.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Natalia Agayeva, and I live on 7609 Southeast 29th Street. I'm artistic director of the Russian Chamber Music Foundation of Seattle. I'm also a concert pianist, and I teach piano. And I would like to say that I've been a MICA supporter since the very beginning. I spoke here about 2 years ago, and I will continue speaking and supporting MICA because of MICA, I feel a lot closer to the community. And because of MICA, I had a chance to get to know other arts organizations like Myville, the theater and dance academy, and the Musical Minds. I became friends with them, and because of MICA and all of these arts organizations, I came up with lots of interesting projects, and we were able to collaborate together. For example, like Myville and my organization, we were able to put a project together last year with artists, painters involved, and music, so paintings and music. And this May, we have a project that's coming up with YTN. It's called Scrabbin' and Poetry, where the kids will be reading the poetry and the young musicians will be performing. I think it gives us, as me personally as an artist, performer, teacher, it gives me lots of opportunities to create, and also other organizations, art organizations, to collaborate all together and just as a community, and with a lot of kids involved. And because, all of these organizations, they do have kids involved, and kids are definitely our future. And I asked one of my students, actually several of my students, what music and arts mean to them, and why is it important to have the art center. And lots of them answered that music, like if you look at the painting, it makes you think, it makes you feel. The same things happen with music. The same things happen when you act in a theater. And all of it you can do in one place and all together, where it unites people. It unites neighbors. It unites, it's music and arts and everything. I speak as an artist and a musician right now. So it unites. It doesn't matter what language you speak and how you speak. You just feel and you experience and you think. And I think all of it enrich. And to have a Mercer Island Center for the Art here on the island is very crucial and very important, because it will bring more diversity and it will definitely enrich people. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Leslie Bain. I am of 4180 West Mercer Way, a multi-generational Mercer Island family. That's all I need to go into. But I want to ask a question, which is, who are we, and what do we care about? Everybody in this room says they care about the arts. We also care about parks. Can we have both of those things? Yes, we can. I am imploring all of you, elected leaders, to give us the leadership we need. Money Magazine hasn't read Next Door Neighbor. Who are we? We need your leadership. Are we a community that can have a real discussion about what we want our parks to be? Are we a community that can have a conversation about how we can accommodate the arts? Everybody's for it. We're for all of those things. I'm glad you're looking at the comp plan. I think it's weak on some of the things that are under the umbrella of livability. I encourage you to look at what other communities are doing. They are putting the arts and culture as something that is central. What do we want our town center to be? Where is that going to come from? Bless Suzanne's heart. The things that we value as a community are not going to come out of thin air. The 1996 plan for the town center, very good plan, out of date, but very good, had a theater in it. Well, where was that going to come from? Other communities would kill to have the kind of people you've got here getting their checkbooks out. Other communities support these things as part of what makes their community great. We need your leadership. We need your strong leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time I'd like to invite up numbers 51 through 53 to queue up behind here. Thanks.
Hi, I'm tired. Oh, and my name is Kyle. I'm in 5th grade, and I am completely supportive of exposing art. Years ago, I talked about how I moved here for YTN's fantastic campus. That has still not happened. I want our realistic dream to become a reality, and I know it's possible. Last night at 9:30, my mom told me about this opportunity, so I rushed to the piano and quickly composed this song. I hope you strongly consider Micah so the arts can have a home in Mercer Island. Now I'll play it. I'm here to speak about the arts and how Micah would benefit them. I'm a Youth Theater Northwest actor, Steve, but I also compose and write lyrics. So I made a little song about Micah. So here it goes. Island isn't okay. The arts needs a home on this isle, so please listen for just a little while. MICA stands for Mercer Island Center for the Arts, but it's also another acronym, so in 4 parts I will describe 4 ways MICA can improve MI. 1, 2, 3, 4. M stands for money. The town can be built from Mozart to Old Deuteronomy. MICA would add business to the town, adding value to our economy. I stands for if it wouldn't happen, the arts would be homeless. Oh no. Music on the streets with theatrical arts with nowhere to go. C stands for classes, an important one indeed. Without artistic classes out in school, creativity has no feed. Finally, A, accessibility for all with the arts, that would be my T. Any girl, any boy, anyone can use this thinking toy to get inspired, to learn a lot, to have some fun, and it's just not a Mercerdale Park being used to have everybody be amused with the heart. MICA, M-I-C-A. MICA, and hey, you know what's good for you, for me, for all. You'll see, MICA needs to be built. We need to start MI, arts getting a stilt. MICA, M-I-C-A. The arts are essential, the choice shouldn't be gray. MICA, M-I-C-A. Mercer Island needs MICA. Bring M-I, M-I-C-A. Please allow MICA to make this town's of artists happy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, who's coming after that? I think that was the finale for 2 hours of public comment. Thank you to all the speakers. Thank you to all of you who have stayed here. Council is now going to take a 10-minute break. Thanks. Okay, I think we're going to continue on with the meeting. It's a lot emptier in here now. Yeah. Yeah. It's date night. Okay, so great. All right. So after a couple hours of public comment, we are now moving on to the consent calendar. I'd like to just note that the consent calendar contains payable reports, meeting minutes from January 23rd, 2018, Agenda Bill 5382, Arch 2018 Administrative Budget and Work Plan, and Agenda Bill 5383, Arch 2017 Housing Trust Fund Recommendations. Agenda Bill 5387, City Council Rules of Procedure Amendments, was removed from tonight's agenda during the agenda approval, and the item will be rescheduled for a future meeting. I'd also like to note that there was an error found in the proposed motion language in Agenda Bill 5353. The revised motion language should read as follows: approve the use of up to $93,900 from the city's share of the 2017 Arch Housing Trust Fund and $57,899 as a forward commitment of the city's 2018 Housing Trust Fund contribution, as recommended by the Arch Executive Board, and authorize execution of any related agreements and documents. Basically, there was a number miscalculation in the agenda bill in our packets, so it's more of an administrative activity. So with that said, is there a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended?
So I'd be happy to make that motion. You did say the error was in 5353. It's in 5383, just for the record. But with that correction, move to accept the consent calendar.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Consent calendar approved. I did have a conversation with the city manager, and based on the length and duration of public comment, there was the recommendation, which I concurred with, to move the general sewer plan update to a later council meeting, and that is because we did have consultants waiting for quite some time, and it was the general sense of courtesy and best and highest use of their time would be to let them go and to come back another evening. So with that, I would need a motion to amend the agenda, I believe. So is there anybody willing to make a motion to remove AB 5381 general sewer plan update?
So if I could just ask, so they have gone home? So they are no longer here?
I believe so. Julie, the consultants have gone home? They have.
Okay, very well. Then I move to amend the calendar.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Amendment passes. With that, we'll then move to regular business, AB 5385, Critical Areas Code Update, Scope of Work, Approach, and Public Engagement Plan. Thank you and welcome, Evan.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm just going to pull up the PowerPoint here and get started. And I didn't realize it was song night, so I apologize. I've not prepared a song and so on.
Next.
But of course, it would be humiliating for me, at least. Of course, tonight, really what we're trying to do is get started on our critical areas update. This was an update that we discussed with the City Council as part of our comprehensive plan amendment docketing process, and is somewhat past due, if you will. What I'd like to do is just briefly go over the scope of work, which is included in your agenda bill, touch on our public engagement plan, and then briefly speak to schedule. Following tonight, we are planning on going out for a proposal on obtaining best available science to inform our critical areas update, and that is really what I'm looking for the council to nod to tonight. So the scope of work, the current critical area regulations, of course, were adopted in 2005. The Growth Management Act, RCW 3670A, typically requires that you update your critical area regulations initially in 2015 and then every 8 years after. And that is purposefully by the state on a 4-year rotation with our required update for our Shoreline Master, our Shoreline Master program. Our Shoreline Master program, of course, was also updated a little bit later than what the state would have preferred, and so our next update for the Shoreline Master program was due in by June of 2019, which gives us a bit of an opportunity to be efficient in our exercise here, to both update our critical areas regulations. To have one set of critical area regulations for the entire island, we would need to do a minor amendment to our Shoreline Master program. And I think we can roll that minor amendment to the Shoreline Master program into our state-mandated 2019 update, which will get us back on track for their every 4-year rotation. So that is the basic idea behind the critical areas update and the SMP in terms of timing. We are looking to combine this both for efficiency and to address the state requirements, as I mentioned a moment ago. The scope of work before you really has 2 parts, if you will, around critical areas. The first is that the state requires that we reevaluate statutory changes between 2005, when we adopted our critical area regulations, and today. We reevaluate best available science and any new science that might have come out in the intervening years related to the protection of critical areas, and that we take some kind of action in relation to those items. This does not mean that your critical area regulations have to fully comply with what best available science would recommend, for example, around stream protections or watercourse protections, but that if we're not complying with best available science, that we identify a competing policy goal that the Council feels is served in the balancing of our protections or regulations. That's the required part, the mandated part. As your planning manager, I am recommending that you incorporate a few other items or tasks into your scope of work. These are primarily cleanup or simplification in both your critical areas regulations and to some extent in your Shoreline Master program. These are not necessarily policy changes, but a double check, if you will, that we've drawn the right regulation up to implement the Council's will, and that it's clear and easily administered by your city staff. And to the extent there might be any change to the policy direction, we can incorporate that as well. We are looking at whether or not we should provide some additional code flexibilities, especially in the context where we might see some pressure, if you will, to increase wetland or stream buffers. That's often balanced by a discussion around what types of flexibility should we have for existing development near wetlands or streams or things of that nature. And then, of course, we do have an extensive mapping system of our critical areas on Mercer Island. We are looking at updating some of that information as well. So those are the 2 parts of the scope of work at a high level. I'm happy to expand on it further, but if I may, I'm going to touch just briefly on our public engagement and our schedule. Mayor?
Great, thank you. Council, any questions for Evan? Celine?
With respect to de-bulkheading, de-armoring, and pocket beaches and trying to provide incentives, is that something that you would see fitting into this in any way?
Not normally, Deputy Mayor. That would be a more significant Shoreline Master Program amendment in my mind, and it's really outside of the scope of the critical areas discussion. At least as we've scoped it at the moment, the SMP update would be to incorporate the critical areas within our shoreline jurisdiction and to clarify or clean up, if you will, some of our SMP standards in a non-substantive way. For example, we currently use the term moorage facility in our Shoreline Master Program. A moorage facility, as defined in our regulations right now, includes a dock, a buoy, a boat lift, a variety of things. Our standards are not always clear in how individual metrics built into our SMP are intended to apply to moorage facilities, i.e., are they intended to apply to all docks, buoys, boat lifts, etc., or is it really a standard that's intended to be applicable to a dock? That's the kind of cleanup or clarity that I'm trying to add into your Shoreline Master Program. I'm not really suggesting that as part of this exercise we would update or revise more substantive items like shoreline armoring or ecological function of the shoreline.
So, follow-up question on that. If we're talking about that level of cleanup, are we coordinating with Army Corps with their incentive programs? Because they have an incentive on fast-tracking of dock permits that involves planting of trees.
Yeah. So the short answer is yes. We will be coordinating with a number of state and federal agencies as part of this exercise, more or less in the background as we're drafting materials. A little bit in the weeds, but the Department of Ecology has actually adopted a revised joint review process, which would allow us to get both the Shoreline Master Program update and approval by the Department of Ecology while the council is engaged in your review. You may recall when you did the original SMP update, I think the council here actually passed the Shoreline Master Program in 2011, and it wasn't until 2015, if memory serves, that the SMP came back from Ecology and you could take final action on it. The joint review would get that down to more like a concurrent approval with the city's action.
Okay, but if Army Corps has an incentive and somebody adds a tree and they're doing development on the same lot and we have a tree replacement, we're coordinating in a way that that tree plus our replacement trees are all accounted for individually. Okay.
Wendy?
So for the critical areas, is this clarifying cleanup of existing standards under the mandated, how is that related to the recommended procedural requirements? What's the link there, knowing how much I love and appreciate all these codes? What does that mean?
So the overarching link in my mind is frankly cleanup and clarity around a lot of these procedural requirements, both in our critical areas code and in our procedural. For example, we currently have a critical areas determination process, which allows us to authorize the buffer averaging of a wetland or a stream or the alteration of a steep slope. Of those three things, the alteration of a steep slope is probably best evaluated concurrently with your building permit review because it's often a very specific engineering analysis. A wetland buffer averaging or a stream buffer averaging might be more appropriately evaluated before the building permit comes in because, of course, the building permit at that point is fully designed and you might not get that house as part of that buffer averaging discussion. So there's a distinction between our protections in critical areas, which is not recognized by our process. Trying to provide an easier, more straightforward path forward is the goal in the procedural amendments and, frankly, in some of the cleanup in your critical areas regulations.
Benson?
Evan, can you, it looks like we're targeting or appropriating $160,000, I guess, for a consultant. Is that an RFP process, or do you guys, it is? And
yes, we are planning on going to RFP right after your meeting tonight, if possible.
Okay, and can you, there's a general description what you want this consultant to do. Can you get into more detail, or, is there things that the staff can do to keep this cost down, or?
Yeah, internally we've certainly had the conversation about how we can best manage our costs. So a couple of different pieces to this. There's $160,000 that was originally aimed at this particular update, which included both the critical areas review and the incorporation of this set of amendments into the Shoreline Master Program. We also had another $35,000 identified for the 2019 update. So simply by combining these two exercises into one update process, we've already pulled $35,000 off of what we would anticipate spending for a future SMP update. Department of Ecology, as part of their mandate, if you will, around the update of our Shoreline Master Program, has indicated that they would have between $15,000 and $20,000 available in a grant that the city could use towards that update. What that doesn't translate into, and just to be transparent about this, is I don't think we're out of roughly $125,000 for the best available science review. Certainly going to look for a competitive RFP process and try and get that number as low as I can. I think it's probably a little high, but I don't know that I could tell the council that we're getting. I don't know what the matter of degree would be at this point.
Okay.
May I move on to the public engagement part of this, Mayor?
Please.
So the public engagement, in short, is intended to mirror, to some extent, what we did with the residential development standards, which was a fairly, at least in my experience, rigorous public engagement exercise. So this would include our standard process for any code amendment or SMP update, which of course includes a public hearing, a legal notice, things of that nature. In addition to that, we would be looking at community meetings with interested parties or interested members of the public. We would be, in particular, when we spoke with the Planning Commission about this scope of work in the public engagement plan, they really appreciated the panel discussion that we had at one of our elementary schools where the Planning Commission had a little bit of a chance for back and forth with some of our community. I think they would like to do that again. I think they also recalled some of our town center meetings where they had a panel of experts at the table, and so we might be looking into that as well. Of course, we'd have our social media outreach on Facebook, Nextdoor, and on our city website. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we are going to need to, both by state law and just as good practice, coordinate with a number of other organizations. Pardon me. So I'll mention the Muckleshoot Indian Tribe, of course, tends to be active on Lake Washington. This is a First Nation that we would be coordinating with as part of this exercise. They often comment on our critical area determinations around water courses. The Army Corps of Engineers was brought up a moment ago. We will be coordinating also with the Department of Ecology and the Department of Fish and Wildlife, to name a few. Any questions about the public engagement process?
Wendy?
Can you tell me how many impacted properties you might be reaching out to? I noticed that was in number 9 under C. Do you have a sense of the magnitude there?
I don't yet, is the short answer. And it probably depends a little bit on which properties we feel are significantly impacted. So, for example, critical area regulations include regulations for erosion hazard, which typically occurs on soils like we have on Mercer Island at a 15% gradient, which would pick up, of course, all of the hillsides on the island and much of the top. If we pull out erosion hazard and just focus on landslide, steep slope, wetlands, and streams, we've probably narrowed that scope to some extent. And then from there, we need to winnow it further. Without knowing what the best available science would say, it's a little hard to foresee how best to target some of our community outreach. For example, we may get best available science back that indicates our landslide hazard areas and our management of steep slopes is spot on and perfect. But maybe we need to talk a little bit more about wetlands. So maybe narrowing our community outreach around wetlands would be appropriate. That's the kind of thing I would anticipate as we get further into the process.
I'm going to throw in a question. I think, what I'm sensing right now is because this is basically approval for an RFP, there's still a certain amount of unknown. And what will come back is once we, A, see the bids, and then B, of course, determine or refine the course of work itself. I would then think equally based on the comments that you just made that you would be able to come back to council at some point and give us more detail in terms of what that community engagement is going to look like based on the work plan that's going to be most appropriate. Would we anticipate that perhaps in maybe a couple months? Be it on consent, be it as another study session, but just to get a general sense of where we're going with this once we have a consultant on board?
So my hope is to get a consultant on board as soon as possible, if I may, Mayor, which, to put to literal terms, would be sometime in March at this point. I would anticipate that consultant would need somewhere between 3 and 4 months to put together a good set of best available science material for anyone to meaningfully evaluate. I'm certainly happy to show up before the council and update you on process before that point, but I'm not sure I'll have a lot to say until that occurs. In the meantime, we are trying to use our time efficiently with the Planning Commission. Critical area regulations, SMP regulations, as many of you know, are very arcane, specific things. Simply educating our Planning Commission and to some extent our public on what our regulations say today, and maybe identifying some of those cleanup items that I spoke to a moment ago, is what I'm hoping to use our time for in the intervening month or 2 or 3. Which might be a nice segue into the scheduling, if I may. So phase 1, of course, is really identifying the scope of work for council nods tonight, and then looking at retaining our consultant for a review of that best available science. At least at initial stage, and Councilmember Wong, to your question a moment ago, I am anticipating using the consultant primarily for the best available science review and to speak authoritatively on that technical part of this, and that we would use our staff primarily for the public process, maybe using some of our community engagement money from one of your past service packages, but trying to use the staff for the community engagement and for the code drafting. So the bulk of the administrative work, if you will. That best available science, as I mentioned a moment ago, I really anticipate will be produced more or less in Phase 3 and inform that Planning Commission discussion when they get to actual deliberations. In Phase 2, what I'd like to do, as I said a moment ago, is really review our current regulations, identify edits that would help simplify or clarify what our existing regulations are, or simply clean up, if you will, some of those regulations. I'd also like to speak with the Planning Commission. Perhaps this is another area where we'd have at least the leadership discussion between the Council and the Planning Commission around our decision-making framework. Critical area regulations often get put into a tension between protection of community resources and the use of private property. There's a policy decision to be made in that context, but often what happens is we argue about facts, which I tend to want to avoid because I tend to think facts are facts. And usually in this kind of context, facts would be something like, if you provide a 300-foot buffer off a watercourse, you'll get large mammals going up and down that buffer, which may not be appropriate on Mercer Island, or it might be. If you provide a 75-foot buffer off a watercourse, you might get small mammals going up and down that buffer. And really, if we're talking about water quality protection, we're really looking at that inside 25 feet along the watercourse. There's a policy discussion as to which one do we really care about, but we really shouldn't argue about the facts, whether it's 25 feet or 75 feet or 150. So that decision-making framework, if you will, is intended to make sure that when the Planning Commission or the City Council is evaluating this, you have a good fact-based policy decision in front of you. And then, of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, we begin our community outreach really in Phase 2. And this will be initially around our public education. Phase 3, then, would be our more standard code review process with the Planning Commission. I would anticipate this would start, and I'm using approximate timelines here. I'm not trying to commit to a solid date yet because I don't have best available science nailed down yet. But sometime in the summer, so July, August, I would expect we would really get into Phase 3. And where you would see Phase 3 start is when we had good scientific information to inform this whole discussion. We would be reviewing the best available science, the BAS I have on the screen. Policy direction coming out of a comprehensive plan. Recall the Council did docket a comprehensive plan amendment, so we can go into that world as well if we need to. And then looking for our public input around those policy decisions. In Phase 3, we'll begin to draft our code. This will begin to look fairly similar, I think, to your residential development standards process at the Planning Commission, where we'll have draft code, we'll talk about the reasons the amendments are there, and try and get to a place where we can make a recommendation to the City Council after a public hearing. That's where I am on the phasing for the review. I would expect this back to Council probably towards the end of the year, which puts us right on time for our June 2019 update.
Great, thank you. Council, any further questions for Evan?
I just can't help myself, but after hearing all of that and thinking about best available science, if we wanted to know how big of a pocket beach, how much de-armoring, what moves the needle, would this not be a time where we could put it in RFP and just get a sense of what it might cost to get the facts that we would need to determine if we would put incentives or even just policies around redevelopment of shorelines and some portion of the shoreline having being affected by that?
We certainly could, is the short answer. I think there's a couple of trade-offs the Council should consider before giving that direction. So if I may, I'll illustrate them just briefly. The first is you are talking about an increase in the scope of the technical review beyond what I would normally expect for a best available science review. That's something we can certainly accommodate. We can draft the scope of work up and expand it if needed. I also think, just based on a review of your recent Shoreline Master Program update, there was a fair bit of discussion and back and forth, if you will, around that SMP update. And I think what you're describing could be politically complicated. The best available science in the critical areas update by itself, at least in my experience, is also very politically complicated. So I think the amount of time we would expect to kind of work through our community engagement, work through the policy decisions, and try and give you a good recommendation would accordingly grow. And that, again, this is Council's direction at the end of the day, but really what I'm trying to do here is check off our critical areas update, which we're past due on, and make sure that we're okay on our SMP amendment, which is coming up soon. In terms of the ecology review, last thought, and I'll stop talking. The joint review that I described a moment ago, where ecology is consolidating their public hearing with our public hearing and their public comment period with our public comment period, I think we could expect more analysis by the Department of Ecology in our SMP amendment if we went down this path. So one of the assumptions I have, at least at the moment, to be borne out by what our actual amendments say, is that we won't have to engage a consultant to prepare what's termed a cumulative impact analysis, a CIA document. And the basic idea behind a CIA document is that we're documenting that there's no net ecological decrease in function along the shoreline as part of our SMP update. We can certainly roll that in to address the item that you're referring to, Deputy Mayor, but I would expect when we start getting into the meat of our SMP, we will probably need to anticipate paying for that kind of service as well. So, basic point, cost and time.
Bruce?
So I'm simultaneously intrigued and fearful of the direction the Deputy Mayor is taking. Were we to essentially say, good idea, but not this time, when would be the next opportunity to address the shoreline Pocket Beach armoring question that he's raising?
The Council can elect to update your SMP really at any point in terms of the regulations on the ground. So if the Council said, hey, we want to get past, for example, this critical areas update and the little cleanup stuff you're talking about for the SMP, and then we're going to do this bigger review, we could do that as soon as we're done with the critical areas update.
But is it it's 4 years hence that we'd be obliged to revisit it anyway?
4 years hence, we would be obliged, 4 years from 2019, we would be obliged to have the conversation around critical areas again. And shorelines will be 8 years from 2019, so 2027, okay, if my math is
okay. Right. The comment I'll make is, having lived through the SMP, it is, you're talking about the critical areas will be difficult. SMP was very difficult. It lit up all of the waterfront homeowners with potential impacts to their property rights, and it was a multi-year process that we went through to get that done. So while I share your sense that there's an opportunity, I think it's having just sort of gotten ourselves to the point where we're out of the Sound Transit fight and we're out of the residential code fight. We're looking at this fight. It's the wrong word to use, but this addressing this challenge with this critical areas ordinance. My inclination is to think that trying to tackle shoreline at the same time would be a bigger bite than we ought to try and take at this point, despite the fact that there's some merit to it for sure in terms of potential for improving our shorelines and salmon habitat and all the things that go along with that.
Wendy?
To be clear, we are looking at the shoreline. We are going to catch up to best available science. We're just not going to go super deep.
Yeah, and it's really around ecological function of the lake versus ecological functions of our other critical areas, if you will. Under the state law construct, the lake is not a critical area per se, but things like wetlands, watercourses, et cetera, are.
And there are plenty other agencies looking at all of that as well. Right?
Oh, yes.
Plenty.
Yeah, to that extent, I'm going to chime in, and I think I'm going to concur with Bruce. Meaning, I think that there's some synergies. There's some very clear synergies, and I think there's passion and commitment both in the council and probably the community in terms of some of the sustainability benefits. Yet I came in, I think, maybe halfway through SMP, and half was a lot. I'm also thinking to at least the verbal commitment that many of us have made to the city staff in terms of trying to manage the scope of the workload in 2018, and I'm anticipating that this would not be a minor or incremental addition were we to go there. So with that, I'm liking the idea. It's the reality of it, I think, that would probably cause me pause at this point. But, Benson, Wendy, any?
I will simply say that I think I tend to support the idea that, certainly in light of the financial challenges that we're talking about, the fact that at the planning session, we've talked about concerns about staff and not adopting the right way to put it would be to try to narrow the priorities that we have and to do what we adopt well. I guess I'm a little reluctant to expand the number of priorities and to expand the scope of the work that we sort of have identified to date. And maybe if we can get past our financial challenges and get a better sense where we are staffing wise, then maybe we should go back and revisit this issue. But I'm a little reluctant to do it this time around.
I move to approve the proposed scope of work and public engagement plan for the Critical Areas Code update.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion on the table. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Great. With that, then, we are moving on to other business. Councilmember absences. We have 2 absences this evening. We have Councilmember Acker and Councilmember Wiesentiner. Is there a motion to excuse Councilmember Acker?
So moved.
There's been a first and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Is there a motion to excuse Councilmember Wiesentiner?
So moved.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Great. With that, first question, are there any upcoming council member absences to report?
So it's planning way ahead, but July 3rd?
July 3rd. Okay. That is actually a good one, given that it's the day before a public holiday. And maybe we should ask our city manager if she would want to make a recommendation to us, perhaps, sometime soon about whether or not we should reschedule July 3rd, because that might be a tough day to get quorum, or at least a lot of enthusiasm.
I think that's a good point. I think we ran into this issue last year, didn't we?
I'm going to say I've got a trip to France to visit our sister city in the second half of July, so pushing 3 to the end of July won't work for me.
So the following Tuesday would be the 10th. Is it the 10th? We already have the 17th.
We have a 17th.
Then the 10th would be a special meeting. Do you want me to put this as a potential? We could just add it as a placeholder and then kind of revisit it later. Okay.
Yeah, we can make sure that Councilmember
July
Acker
10.
and Wiesentiner are aware.
Okay.
Good catch. Okay, with that, planning schedule.
So it looks like we will need to have an executive session. Looks like right now, currently at 5:30 on the 20th, but we may need to make that at 5. Just kind of depends. Just heads up on that. Just want to call your attention to a special business. February 20, we have on here a Tree City USA proclamation, and you're probably wondering, well, what is that about? We have really prepared an application to be submitted to be identified as a Tree City USA. Feels like I'm kind of surprised we're not one. So it's not a very difficult process at all. So Hannah Van Pelt has put that application together, but as part of the application, you actually have to really present a proclamation to kind of show our support for our trees and tree habitat and that sort of thing. Pretty easy thing, but we want to make sure we have that scheduled. So that's on the 20th. Also want to call your attention to the police patrol equipment. So this is equipment replacement. We're using asset forfeiture funds, so that's great. It's not our money, but we do need you to actually authorize that. So that item is set for the consent calendar on the 20th. And then we also have the ratification of YRA 8 plan update as well. And under regular business, we have, assuming we get those proposals, Lyft and Uber returning with a proposal for your consideration also on the 20th. And then it looks like we're because we had to take off the general sewer plan tonight, we'd like to have that item as a study session item on March 6th. And then I'll just work with Scott to reschedule the code compliance program for later. And those are a couple new changes.
Okay.
That's all I have.
The only thing I'm going to ask is, so the 20th, you at least currently only have 30 minutes worth of material for the regular meeting. Does it not make sense to put the sewer update there?
The consultants aren't available. We did ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have no doubt we can fill this calendar.
And that 30 minutes might not really be realistic.
Yeah, of course, but still,
Yeah.
I was just trying to
be efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Any other comments? Okay, great. Moving on to board appointments. There are no appointments this evening, and we'll move to council member reports. Tonight, I think we'll start to my left, which is Wendy.
I just want to say I went to the CAG meeting last night and thought that was really well done. The information was really clear. I liked getting the information ahead of time. I saw everyone engaged in the room, so well done to our staff who all showed up and were able to answer questions and speak to the agenda, and the consultant who really did a good job, I think, facilitating and capturing the information. So thank you and well done.
Yeah, I was also at that CAG meeting. I thought that, and also at the the first public community hearing on the 29th of January. I certainly will encourage the public to go out to those meetings. I think it is one of those rare chances where the public can actually ask Chip and other folks questions. And we only had a handful of people, but they asked a lot of good questions. And so, anyway, we certainly encourage people to go to the next one. This past Thursday, a number of us were at the mayor, and I think Councilmember Wiesentiner, there may have been others, were at the Boys and Girls Club breakfast. It was a great event. The athletic director for University of Washington was a great speaker. And so it was, also we had an inspiring testimony from one of the young ladies who was who goes to the Boys and Girls Club. So looking forward to also the breakfast tomorrow. And so for those at the YFS South Foundation. So hope to see some of you guys there.
Celine?
I'm a hopeless romantic, so I'm in TV land giving people Valentine's Day options. There are two. One is a gathering at the VFW for the Sister City exchange students. And if that's not your flavor, there's an Arts Council meeting the same night, same time, at the Community Center. And that will be the first night that I think we dig into the comprehensive plan update discussion for what we might craft or begin to construct as our statement for the comprehensive plan. So Happy Valentine's Day. And if you don't do that, there's a dance on Friday night sponsored by the Arts Council, so you can be engaged on Valentine's Day with the most expensive night to go out, and then on a cheap night, that Friday night, come to the VFW for a dance.
Not romantic at all, but I'll see you all at the breakfast tomorrow. After the breakfast, there's a K4C meeting, which I know that, Benson, you're coming too. So that sounds like we're going to have a quorum. We'll have to not sit together. That's tomorrow morning after the breakfast. And then tomorrow evening, if you have been, and I think all of you have been, appointed to an SCA board position, you are encouraged, or maybe more than that, to attend a new and returning board member gathering at SeaTac City Hall, and I've been co-opted as the new SCA board member to sit on a panel for that, so I will be not only there but somehow participating in it. And that's it.
Well, I don't have a whole lot to add. Other than looking forward to tomorrow, definitely. It's always a great event. And I'm just trying to think. It seems like there's a lot that's going on these days. But, yeah, we'll just leave it at that. So, if there's no other comments, meeting is adjourned. I was just banging.